When they mocked the one-eyed weakling they called Cyclops, drafted straight into the void. A deadly sea game of floating islands, where most challengers die on the very first jump. But they had not seen what his missing eye could do. The eye of destiny sat in his scarred socket, danger glowed red, treasure shined gold, and he mapped out every single island. Before it could kill him, sending home the world's very first perfect upload of a giant fish with 50,000 critical hits, Amy Yope, the one-eyed man everyone wrote off, was the only one who could see, carrying his entire nation on his back. Make sure to subscribe and follow, along as we dive right into his journey. To understand how he got here, we start from the beginning. Engines roared through the cabin as he sat in his seat with a parachute strapped tightly to his back and goggles pushed up on his forehead. Nearly 50 of them were packed inside, every skin. Tone and face were totally different, but the fear on everyone ran exactly the same. He felt nervous too, though he could stomach it since transmigrating was already bizarre enough on its own. Now this was just absolute absurdity squared, too, and a half years ago he kicked the bucket exploring outdoors, between one single blink and the next, he woke on Blue Star in an archaeology student's body. Complete with living parents and seamless connections, but there was one fatal catch: this world was already rotting at the root. 5 years back, the production of oil, fresh water, and food completely collapsed. Global wars broke out. Never stopped, leaving Korea as the lone exception. They stayed solid. Through sustainable planning and a national habit of hoarding resources, everyone lived line. But while other nations had long since cinched their belts up to their throats, Korea was still standing strong. Then, 20 days ago, the turning point arrived. A voice calling itself the Supreme Will echoed across Blue Star to announce that a massive, world-ending catastrophe would sweep the entire planet in 3 years. Survival only lay in joining the endgame simulation. Every nation would randomly select 50 challengers and drop them straight into a simulated realm called the Void Sea. No solid land existed, only islands floating above an endless ocean of clouds. Any challenger who gathered resources from those floating islands could upload them, sending vital supplies back to feed their nations. Destiny, it was a high-stakes scavenging contest with national survival on the line. Winner takes all and the losers perish completely. That day, the entire world fell apart as the Korean livestream hijacked every television and phone at once. Immune to anyone cutting off the power or internet, Korea walked in with the utmost confidence. Their base was the strongest, but then the rules dropped, and everyone froze. The first rule was simply that challengers would parachute directly into the Void Sea. How many regular citizens had ever even touched a parachute before? Extreme heights, chutes failing to open, and blind landings. That single terrifying step alone wiped out more than half of the first batch. Of 50 leaving survivors they could count on 2 hands. He watched it all as a spectator, breaking into cold sweats at the screen. Now here he was, chosen for the second batch of replacements, about to be thrown down himself. Across the Korean live streams, public panic had already reached a fever pitch, with channels mocking whichever doomed soul they had drawn, an archaeology student praying to his ancestors, or some internet celebrity dancing for the monsters. The channel broadcasted Jijin singing while playing basketball, but only a few tried to stay hopeful, noting that the draw was random and no nation could field only special forces. Yet that familiar gloom kept circling back. The foreigners panicked at the mere mention of a parachute, while Korea started the race a step behind. Then, the endgame simulation's National Destiny Challenge announcement rang in every ear at once, as each country's second round of replacements finished, bringing each quota back to 50. Every challenger now had one daily chance to send resources home, multiplying them by 100 to 10,000 times, and each country could drop one non-military item to their own challengers each round, alongside a short message under 20 characters. If a challenger's vital signs hit 0, death was permanent, and when a country's challengers died out 3 times, that nation was permanently disqualified from ever entering again. Disqualified, he sneered inwardly, knowing it was far crueler than simple erasure, which is clean. They closed their eyes and it ends, while disqualification meant watching their entire nation slowly drain its resources and societal order collapse, the citizens waiting out a long, desperate despair before they died. Suddenly, a sneer drifted over from across the aisle, and someone called him Cyclops. He looked up to find a Southeast Asian man staring at him, dark-skinned, with a centipede tattooed along his neck, demanding to know if People from Korea who splattered like mud last round even deserved to come in and grab resources. The men around him laughed along with him, but he didn't bite. He just held the man's eyes without expression. Something in that quiet stare unnerved him, because his voice came out fierce yet thin when he warned him that if he kept looking, he would gouge out his remaining eyeball. Other challengers up and down the aisle turned to watch. He said nothing, only unbuckled his belt, stood up, walked 3 steps, and stopped right in front of him. He tried to hold his ground, demanding to know what he wanted and reminding him the rules. Stated attacks in the cabin caused no damage. He didn't waste a word. He raised his left hand, hooked his fingertips into the rim of his eye socket, and under the horror of everyone watching, pried the still warm glass bead straight out. The empty socket left behind looked eerie and sinister. He held the fake eyeball out to him, tilted his head, and asked if he wanted it, offering to hand it over. His face went corpse pale, and he shrank as far back into his seat as possible. Few of the more timid onlookers gasped and whipped their heads away. He stared at him for 10 full seconds until the bully dared not even breathe, then curled his lip, turned, and walked back to his seat. He pushed the glass bead home, pressed it in, and blinked. A perfect fit. He leaned back, slightly annoyed. Every other transmigrator out there gets a system or an overpowered skill, launching straight into the stratosphere. Yet his own soul transmigration only handed him a second-hand body that was barely 80% functional, missing original factory parts. His daily entertainment consisted of nothing but playing with a glass bead. In the Korean livestream, the chat detonated the moment that scene played. Half of them called him a ruthless lunatic, while the rest wailed that a one-eyed man was a free kill the instant he landed. Soon, a flood of overseas handles poured in, foreign feeds laughing that Korea had nobody left if they were picking cripples, and told them to start preparing the funerals. One even bragged in Korean that he immigrated early enough to avoid being killed by a blind guy like him. Mockery ignited the Korean crowd's temper, and they fired right back that one-eyed man would outlive any two-eyed freak among them. He knew none of that. Of course, he simply leaned back and ran the calculations in his head, weighing whether his first move after landing should be finding water, cover, or reading the terrain. Then a soft chime rang inside his skull. He blinked. He knew that seductive notification sound better than anything, having waited for it in his dreams every single night for 2.5 years. Normally, what came next should be a grand, emotionless mechanical voice, the system arriving at last, the protagonist finally descending to the summit of his life. Instead, a sweet female voice introduced herself as the Earth Korea Transmigrator Management Bureau, at his service, his dedicated customer service representative. ID 9960007, catching him completely off guard. And something felt wrong, as if they ran this with formal corporate operations now. 2. The voice pressed on, reporting that it had detected a transmigrator Yop suffering significant, malicious discrimination from the indigenous population, that his legal rights had been severely infringed, and that under Chapter 3, Article 17 of the Korean Transmigrator Rights Protection Manual, it had urgently activated the cross-border care plan on his behalf. A pattern of golden light flared to life inside his left eye. He sat there dazed, wondering whether he was doing so badly that someone upstairs could not bear to watch, and had come down to run a poverty relief drive, thinking that if he had known a trigger clause like this existed, he would have gouged out his other. By the day he arrived, a Transmigrator Management Bureau, he muttered, does Korea really run a department this unhinged? Is it even registered with anybody? Because a law-abiding citizen cannot go using shady goods of unknown origin. And has transmigration management really gotten competitive enough to assign that overworked corporate slave a dedicated client? Before he could finish the thought, the voice returned and rattled off its work end. Clip reports that it was monitoring the high-dimensional consciousness in his world. Permissions fully cracked, matching a suitable item. Match complete. Item number 99, Eye of Destiny, beginning injection. The next second, a warm current surged out of his left socket, and the glass prosthetic began reshaping under some invisible force. An indescribable swelling pushed outward until he clapped his hand over the eye, alarmed and half convinced the supposed benefit was about to launch straight out of his head. It did not hurt exactly, and after about 10 seconds, the voice reported injection complete, the heat draining away, the socket quiet as if nothing had happened. He kept his hand Clamped over it anyway, because with dozens of people in this cabin, a holy laser firing out now would be a problem. He called out to the customer service lady in his mind, half joking, asking whether a 5-star review earned a cash rebate or maybe some actual gifts. She answered only that the previous user had left an attached message for him to review, wished him great martial success, and vanished. Then his consciousness dipped, and a sheet of golden paper. Words formed in his mind out of nowhere, written in arrogant, wild Korean cursive. The note opened with a lazy greeting, calling him a junior from back home, explaining this eyeball was a leftover from the writer's playing days, donated to the Bureau for Poverty Relief, so he shouldn't look down on it. As for its powers, he said to stop at red and go at green, and on gold he surely knew the golden legend, and if he ever saw gray spots, it meant high-dimensional energy had invaded his area. He warned that with a plain human body, he could only run the eye through minutes a day before he was finished, told him not to whine but to squeeze every second out of himself. If he wanted to last longer, he should figure it out and develop the eye, since it had many uses. Survive first, then grow strong, he closed, and don't let some minor trouble on his home planet scare him witless, signing it with a ridiculous handle about the dreams of 10 million maidens, adding that if they ever met, he would take him to play with some top-tier high-dimensional big swords. He sat in dead silence after the paper dissolved, deciding this counted as landing a government post, even if the whole thing sounded wildly unreliable. A 3-minute real man squeezing out every second is hardly the words of a decent guy, and that bit about the big swords, I'm Yope was taking him at his word. Better keep it. He parted his left hand a crack and froze. He could see the left side, the grain of the armrest, the side profile of the man beside him, the rivets in the cabin wall, all crisp and whole. For 2.5 years, he'd lived with that darkness on his left, turning his head constantly at every crosswalk, and now his eye was back. And whatever else the eye of destiny could do, simply returning his sight was already worth a 5-star review. He went to study it, then his wrist tightened. A dark electronic bracelet had locked itself onto his left wrist, the time glowing in its center, 13 hours and 12 minutes, fused to his skin. He tugged, it didn't budge, and all around the cabin everyone else was wrenching at their own to no effect. The National Destiny Challenge spoke at the same moment, announcing that all challengers had been assigned an upload terminals distributed, that the upload limit was a single independent item within 1 cubic meter, and that the terminal handled material uploads only, with no storage function. As the voice finished, a translucent National Destiny screen bloomed in front of his right eye. He scanned the cabin and saw no one else. Look up, every head fixed forward, so the thing was visible only to its owner, and only to his right eye at that. His panel read out his name as I'm Yope, his nationality as Korea, his vital signs as incomplete, his pollution at 0% for physical health, and his spirit grid at 100% for mental health, pollution for the body, and spirit grid for the mind, both of them obvious traps. Then his eyes snagged on that single word, incomplete. His left eye saw the floor's color and texture perfectly. He could feel the vision whole, yet the National Destiny screen, the voice of the Supreme Will itself, still judged him incomplete, as if it didn't even know what had happened to this eye. So this dream Big Shot's rank might outstrip the Supreme Will, and of course it did. The senior was always the senior, and his path was the absolute best. In the 99th high-dimensional zone, inside golden, magnificent space, a young, handsome man lounged on a throne with 2 stunning exotic goddesses tend to him on both sides. A message flashes on the terminal in his hand, and with a mischievous grin, he taps out a reply, telling someone he calls Sister 13 that he finally sent that eyeball out, that their vessel finally has air. The reply comes instantly, offering congratulations, saying that now at least someone will wear mourning clothes for him someday. He can only beg her to have a normal conversation for once. Back on Blue Star, the backup challenger rosters from every country sync across all the live feeds. The Korean broadcasts immediately count up how few soldiers Korea has drawn, wondering aloud if any of these people have real wilderness experience. Circling the one-eyed guy again, bickering over why everyone went quiet about that very man right after he gouged his own eye out, and constantly fretting that this batch of reserves feels dangerously thin. Then, the official host of the live stream, So Chung-RN, speaks up, reminding the viewers that none of the first batch of survivors were favored at the start. No one is born holding A winning hand, and the ones who make it rely on sharp judgment and the sheer will to crush every obstacle for Korea. The chosen are the backbone of the nation, she says, and no matter their physical state or their starting cards, nobody has the right to write their obituary before the final results are in. The feed goes silent for 2 whole seconds, then erupts with voices begging the camera to swing to the eye-gouging brother, swearing at him to just survive. Inside the cabin, the white lighting suddenly turns deep red. 3 short buzzes signal the jump, and the rear door grinds open as the ramp lowers. He remembers from the broadcast how many challengers froze on that ramp and got forced off the plane once it flew far enough, resulting in heavy casualties, which is exactly why a challenger must jump on their own. One after another, they rush the ramp and dive straight into the clouds below. He steps forward, and as luck would have it, the tattooed man rises too and shoots him a venomous glare, promising they will settle accounts the moment they land. Yet at the edge of the ramp, his legs shake uncontrollably, and every bit of his swagger vanishes into pure cowardice. He slides up behind him as every eye in the cabin is locked onto them, his stream viewers holding their breath. He quietly raises his right leg, tenses up, and kicks him square in backside. The man sails out of the cabin with a scream, and he turns at the ramp and sweeps the dumbstruck crowd, telling them that the rules only restrict attacks causing damage, never that they wouldn't generate kinetic energy. Then he pulls his goggles down, wishes everyone a safe trip, leans back, and spreads his arms, dropping gracefully straight into the sea of clouds. In the Korean live stream, the absolute shockwave of that kick spreads wildly, with the crowd howling that it literally launched them off the toilet, praising his perfect reading comprehension. Since the rules never actually forbade kicking, but the joy is short-lived as foreign accounts flood in, branding the move a dirty sneak attack and calling a kick from 4,000 meters up nothing short of murder, even demanding new rules to punish the malice. But the Korean section explodes right back that 0 damage was done. This is pure Newtonian displacement. Go learn some physics. So Chung Ren catches a lull and asks Jin Gup Bong for his read on what he did. Juk Bong is a retired veteran and tactical expert in his 40s with a buzz cut and dark skin, and he did not hide his approval, declaring it well done. Because he took no penalty, the rules clearly allowed it, and it even counted as a good deed, since he helped the man conquer his fear of heights. He adds that if he were up there, he would have flipped him and kicked him right out face first. The host laughs that his perspective is on another level entirely, and the crowd names the whole crazy thing charity skydiving. In the open air of the void sea, he spreads his arms wide, body locked in an X with biting cold. As the clouds tear past, across his right eye a string of blue numbers ticks his altitude down, 3,700 meters, then 3,622. He punches through the final layer of clouds, and the world opens up beneath him. Floating islands of every size hang suspended in the vast empty air. At the cluster's edge, the small ones are village-sized, classified as Level 1 islands. Those floating a bit higher are much larger, Level 2. And sitting even higher behind the thick clouds, he can barely make out massive shapes, Level 3, Level 4, or beyond. He hesitates for a second, then activates the Eye of Destiny. The world in his left eye shifts. The islands below turn into shifting shades of green, scattered with sparse red dots, sweeping his gaze over the Level 2 island he marked earlier. A tiny golden point appears. It is a legendary treasure, though packed around with many red danger dots. The second he tries to peer closer, sharp pain stabs his left eye. The Eye of Destiny slams shut, leaving his whole body completely hollow and drained. He shakes violently, almost flipping in the rush of air before regaining his posture and steadying. Just 2 seconds. That was all he got. So much for the promised 3 minutes of power. Talk about a major letdown, but then it clicks. His cheat is not weak, he was just arrogant, scanning a hole. Level 2 island 10 kilometers away in a single second was too much. Long-range reconnaissance drains massive energy. Still, that glimpse revealed a lot. Gold means extraordinary treasure, meaning that island has great loot, but the old rule of stopping at red and going at green represents danger. Landing on a gold spot ringed in red right now is suicide. He has to land on a Level 1 island first to survive. Only the living get to collect loot. The numbers fall to 1227 meters. He yanks the rip cord, and his parachute snaps open, jerking him upward. His descent slows to a crawl as he hauls clumsily at the Cords gliding down toward a flat level 1 island off to his left. It is covered with short grass and gravel, ending in a sharp cliff. 50 meters, 20. His feet hit the dirt and he stumbles forward 10 meters. Before tucking into a roll, stopping in a completely exhausted heap. His parachute dissolves into tiny motes of light, and the pack on his back turns into a normal dark backpack. He slumps down, gasping. He made it down alive, but out of all these Korean reserves, how many will ever touch solid ground again? On the Korean livestream, fans celebrate that he landed, saying that Brother Gouger was incredible and their hearts had. He nearly wiped out during that mid-air wobble, securing another landing for Korea. So Chungrin announced he had safely touched down on a level 1 island. Then she asked teacher Seo for his take. Samang noted the landing was good, but the real test was only beginning. These level 1 islands are resource poor. And given his weak physical condition, he advised him to find compatriots fast. He spoke gently and everyone understood, yet angry viewers immediately snapped at him for throwing cold water the second he touched ground, but he ignored them. He simply lowered his eyes to his tablet and reported the director's latest figures. This round, Korea deployed 42 reserves, and only 24 landed safely. His voice shook. 18 compatriots, he revealed, did not survive the skydiving phase. The broadcast fell dead silent as So Chungrin stood and asked everyone to hold a moment of silence for the 18 who, regardless of the outcome, had all given their lives back on Blue Star, inside the Disaster Prevention Command Center. A massive command screen carried every Korean Challenger's live feed. Chief Director Woo, a burly, upright man in his early 50s, received a salute and the grim report that out of the 42 who entered, only 24 landed while 18 were confirmed lost, closing his eyes in grief. His fists clenched as he honored their sacrifice and ordered pension work to begin. They would receive martyrs' pensions, handled quickly and without a single delay. No name was to be missed. Then he asked who was making the fastest progress. He learned that the 8 survivors from the first batch reached level 2 islands. The fastest was the former soldier, King Bong, who had just arrived on a level 3 island to raid a stronghold elsewhere in the world. The United States led with 6 challengers already on level 3 islands. With Russia close behind at 5, Director Wu said nothing, his gaze drifting. Meanwhile, on his level 1 island, our main character opened his backpack to take stock. He found a sharp self-defense dagger, a folding iron pot, a flint, a compressed sleeping bag, and grappling hooks with a 10-meter rope. It was a basic kit, designed with the brutal expectation that survival is entirely up to you. He tucked the sharp dagger into his belt, hung the hooks on his pack, and stuffed the remaining gear back inside before standing up. He needed to explore, find shelter, and secure water, but before he could take his first step, a new announcement echoed from the National Destiny Challenge. The second batch of challengers was now fully deployed across the Void Sea, and their adaptation period had ended. This shocked him. That brutal start was actually nothing more than a beginner's tutorial. The system gave no warning. It declared that starting today, the Void Sea would randomly trigger massive regional disasters, while simultaneously introducing a new set of vassal rules. Any desperate challenger on the verge of death could now submit a vassal application to a foreign survivor. Once accepted, all of their hard-earned rewards would flow directly to the master's nation, and their original citizenship would be completely replaced. The broadcast warned them to stay awake, avoid greed, and fight for survival. He sat back down on the dry earth, dragging the dagger's sharp tip through the dirt. This rule was an absolute psychological blow to everyone. On the surface, it was a lifeline, but underneath, it legalized kneeling to survive. Just someone else's dog, built to sow chaos between the Blue Star nations. The ones who were actually thrilled were the bootlickers back home who'd always dreamed of leaving but lacked the money or skills to get noticed, because the Supreme Will had just opened a fast lane for them. Get picked, land safely. Kneel before some foreign overlord, and instant citizenship was yours. Agency fees included. Truly disgusting, he thought, standing up and brushing the dust off his hands. The Korean livestream churned with that same revulsion, asking if any decent human could have made a rule forcing people into treason. Few naive voices insisted that contestants fighting for their nation's destiny would ever stoop that low, but others snapped back that people were likely burning incense right now, praying to be picked next just for that chance. Sure enough, foreign accounts flooded in to gloat, begging for Korea's players to defect for guaranteed luxury, betting Korea would have someone surrender within 3 days. The Korean chat turned into a brutal war zone, mockingly asking if those foreigners had lost their minds because their own treasuries were empty, demanding to know which Nia certain neighboring island would drop first the moment their foreign bosses ordered them to bow down. That instantly shut those foreign trolls up. Then someone brought up the foreign challenger who was sent home earlier with only a handful of leaves for a 5,000 times return. They joked the air must reek of leaves now, leaving that bitter troll cursing to no effect. The host, Jin Gup Bong, laughed at the joke before turning serious, stating that true patriots would never bend, while cowards would always betray them. Regardless of the rules, for Korea this was just filtering out the trash. His co-host Chongren seamlessly took the mic, adding that she completely trusted their chosen challengers to carry the heavy weight of their nation's future. To the foreign trolls trying to recruit her, she replied sharply, telling them to feed their own starving citizens before worrying about Korea. The comment section instantly exploded, praising her absolute boss energy. This level 1 island was exceptionally barren. Within just 15 minutes, he had crossed it entirely, nothing but dry gravel, sparse grass, and a chaotic stone forest piled in the center, not a single puddle of water anywhere. His lips were peeling, the landing and trek leaving him parched. As he kept walking, he decided to test his eye of destiny, narrowing his left eye on some weeds 3 meters away before activating the skill. A faint green light washed over their outline before he shut it off. It took less than a single second, costing almost no energy. Close-range observation was completely different from long-range scans. He ran it several more times, open and shut in. A single second as effortless as a simple wink. The closer the distance and smaller the target, the lower the cost. That legendary 3-minute limit wasn't about keeping the eye open constantly. It meant breaking that time into pieces, using each second exactly where it counted. A true master is measured not by his stamina, but by how precisely every single stroke lands. Okay, out of context, that definitely sounded a bit wrong. He also discovered that colors represented grades, with most weeds showing only a thin, pale green aura, while the rare ones glowed far brighter. Their depth of shade marked true value and power. Through steady experimentation, he came to understand his strange new left eye well enough to boost his survival odds by a pretty good margin. He walked on, and after another 10 minutes, found a row of vines spilling down the northern cliff face. Fruit just slightly larger than a fist dangled off the edge. Their shells were rough, gray-green and round, looking exactly like coconuts. His focus settled on them, and a glowing line of text popped up before his right eye. It read Cloudberry. This national destiny system was clearly a devotee of minimalism, not even bothering to show if the fruit was edible. He lay at the edge of the cliff, leaning out over the bottomless white cloud sea, grabbed the nearest vine, and with a quick pull reeled in 2 fruits. Retracting to safe ground, he drove his dagger deep into the hard shell, prying it until the gray-green husk cracked open with clear, sweet juice, breathing out a fresh aroma that made his thirst 10 times worse. He leaned down, but his hand stopped cold. For safety, he swept it with his special eye, seeing the juice glowing under a faint green threaded with fine, toxic lines. There were scattered gray spots, his brows furrowed. This was the filthy, high-dimensional energy that Dream World entity had warned him about 1,000 times. Whatever bad reaction this caused, his rising pollution value definitely tied to it. He flung the polluted cloudberry down, watching the liquid splash across the dirt. Back on the Korean live stream, announcer Soyoung-won nearly jumped out of his chair, shocked that he would toss fresh water when he obviously needed to hydrate. The first group had eaten them with 0 issues. Meanwhile, Jin Gukbong wondered if he just found it bitter, while foreign chats mocked Korea's chosen player, claiming he lacked the basic survival sense to tell edible food apart. A part in the chat erupted in pure panic. Can you blame them? That is water. Some angry viewers even threatened to switch to the soldier King Seobong just to spare their sanity, but back on screen, he pried open the second fruit, his left eye flashing with analysis, before tossing it aside. Saming was left jaw-dropped. Meanwhile, he pulled in every single vine. In reach, cracked open the husks and scanned them with his glowing eye, throwing one after another away. Finally, on the 9th fruit, his hand stopped. This juice was completely clean under his vision, shining bright green without those toxic spots. He pulled down more vines, finding only one safe fruit out of 4, 2 clean out of 13. Which was actually great odds. He tilted his head back, taking a massive gulp. The cool, sweet juice coated his parched throat perfectly, as the camera zoomed in. The discarded husks on the ground and the one he drank looked completely identical. To any normal person, there was no difference. Ko-min stared in absolute disbelief, wondering what secret criteria he was using. Meanwhile, back in Korea on Blue Star, in the 3rd Disaster Prevention Research Group, a researcher named Yuk Jin sat facing 3 massive monitors. One played the broadcast, his eyes glued to the discarded cloudberry husks, in his early 30s, holding degrees in complex physics, anomalous biology, and behavioral psychology. He had wanted to quit. He hated writing tedious reports, forced to watch people scavenge the wild. But right now, his scientific curiosity was absolutely off the charts. About that world, his supreme will, or what held the floating islands against gravity and the gravitational model of the void sea, any of those could swallow. 10 years of intense study, but things he could only watch without touching just bored him until now. He scrubbed the video frame by frame, laying close up screenshots of all 13 across the screen, whether by the naked eye or analysis software. The color, texture, and clarity of the juice showed absolutely no difference at all. He pulled off his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose, muttering that it wasn't taste, smell, or touch. His fingers tapped the desk with less than a second from prying it open to making a judgment. Any method relying on deep sensory input was ruled out, leaving only one possibility. Vision. He zoomed in on the streamer's face. Every time he cracked a fruit, his left eye blinked impossibly fast. It was too quick for ordinary viewers to catch, but Yukin spotted it. He knew that left eye was a prosthetic, yet his instinct told him that eyeball held a secret. Interesting. Down on the level 1 island, our guy shivered. Without meaning to, the temperature was dropping fast, and with no wind either. He packed the empty husks away. The flesh was thick enough to save for dinner, and looking up, he found the sky already dark. He needed somewhere to spend the night. He remembered the stone forest sitting dead in the island's center, several giant boulders stacked at random, forming half-enclosed gaps. It wasn't great, but better than sleeping out in the open. He'd gathered a fair number of branches on his way, every size, and his arms were full by the time he reached the edge. The place was bigger up close than from a distance. He circled the forest until, on the north side, 3 giant boulders formed an irregular concave hollow, with the floor dry and a slanted boulder leaning overhead like a roof. This would do nicely. He set his pack at the deepest point against the rock wall, then crouched down to get to work. After gathering 2 large armfuls of dry leaves and withered grass, he worked a handful of the dead grass between his palms until it crumbled into a loose powder, then mounded it into a fist-sized ball. Then he braced the flint against it, tilted his dagger's edge to 45 degrees, and scraped fast. The sparks caught nothing on his first try, but on the second they raised a thread of white smoke and an orange-red ember. He bent low and breathed gently, careful not to rush it, blow too hard, and it guttered, too soft, and it starved. Eventually the ember spread, so he covered it with dry leaves to coax the flame up. He fed it thin branches, then thicker ones, and 10 minutes later, campfire was crackling happily, throwing a warm orange glow across the 3 rock walls. He pulled his sleeping bag from the pack and spread it at the back of the hollow, sitting cross-legged in the campfire's warmth as he fished out the cloudberry husk. There was still a thick layer of flesh clinging inside to scrape off and eat. He laid his dagger against the edge of the flesh and paused, staring at it for 2 seconds. Then he set the husk down and drew out his last intact cloudberry. Instead, screw it, he thought, tossing the fruit in his hand. Better hand in today's supplies first, because back home, people had to be way more anxious than he was. In the Korean livestream, the scrolling comments suddenly slowed down. Viewers were stunned that he hadn't even eaten yet and was already uploading with only one left. They begged Brother Eye Gouger to eat his fill, wondering how much that thing could even be worth, with some muttering about who was cutting onions. He set the cloudberry down on open ground and tapped the terminal on his left wrist. A translucent blue cube of light, a cubic meter across, projected outward to swallow the lone fruit, a prompt surfacing on his right eye screen. Target material detected. Cloudberry 1 unit. Confirm upload. Upload, he commanded. And the frame contracted, the cloudberry dissolving into points of light. Right after, the voice of the National Destiny Challenge rang across all of Blue Star at once, announcing that Korean Challenger meal had successfully uploaded material detecting cloudberry of perfect quality. He froze. Perfect back when he watched the broadcast. The first batch had uploaded. Plenty, most coming back standard. The single best one only excellent. So what? Tier was perfect. Before he could collect himself, the broadcast fired again, announcing a triggered 10,000 times critical hit. He swallowed hard. 10,000 times. Then the voice rolled on, explaining that owing to the first ever appearance of perfect quality material, the critical multiplier had climbed, triggering a 100,000 times critical hit, and the material would drop into Korea's official dedicated warehouse. The instant the news broke, the whole world froze. In Korea, in the plaza of the dedicated warehouse for National Destiny Resources, a logistics staffer named Old Joe dropped his enamel cup to shatter as countless cloudberries poured out of the air into a small mountain. His legs shook as he grabbed his walkie-talkie and reported, voice-breaking, that the plaza was completely buried. Over in the Korean livestream, viewers flooded back by the thousands, screaming about 100,000 times critical hit on a single fruit and the world's first perfect quality. They demanded to know what kind of deity this guy was and swore through tears that he hadn't eaten, telling doubters to stand up. Now Korean netizens were counterattacking abroad, answering rivals whose strongest challenger had only hit excellent, telling them they simply didn't deserve it, and brushing off the cries of cheating and disbelief with the reminder that he'd picked one clean fruit out of 13 until the foreign feeds dissolved into cursing again. Jin Gup Bong slapped the table hard enough to bounce the microphone, crowing that it was beautifully done and asking whether those jealous foreigners' eyes even worked, while Samyang Won, happy but genuinely lost, couldn't grasp why an item that had topped out at excellent came back perfect for him. So Chong Gran rose, congratulating him on the world's first perfect quality feedback record. For Korea, a 100,000 times critical hit, not just a resupply but a ringing slap across every doubter's face. As the comments filled with flags, he sat in front of the campfire, his mind still hazy. One cloudberry, a 100,000 times critical hit at perfect quality, sending 100,000 home to Korea, and he could all but conclude it tied entirely to whether the fruit carried gray spots. Before he could finish working it through, a voice surfaced alone in his ears, congratulating Challenger M. Yope as the first ever to provide perfect quality material feedback, awarding the special achievement, a perfect beginning. Reward dropped, something thudded down out of the sky beside the campfire. In front of him, the dagger in his hand was still frozen in the position of scraping. Right in front of him, the dagger in his hand remained frozen mid-scrape. Firelight and sticky fruit juice flicker softly across a plain wooden box. It has no markings, just rough, ordinary wood grain. He reaches out for the lid. Before his fingers touch it, the global notification interrupts with a new upload. A Japanese challenger named Matsushita Taruko just submitted a flawed cloudberry. It triggered a massive 500 times multiplier. He pulls his hand back. He brushes off his knees, 500 times versus his 100,000, a massive gap. He can already picture the global reaction. It plays out exactly as expected. The Korean stream is absolutely roaring, mocking the other side mercilessly. They tease the Japanese feed until everyone there goes completely silent. Then an American named William Davis uploads a good quality dream hemp leaf. He scores a massive 9,900 times multiplier, just short of the cap. The Korean crowd goes wild. Meanwhile, Jin Gukbong desperately holds back a laugh. A military man shouldn't mock an ally, while So Chongren steers the chat back. She keeps everyone focused. That's when an Indian challenger named Gupta steps up. He uploads an injured rock-spined lizard, landing a solid 1,000 times multiplier. The comment section gets chaotic as users rush off to spy on rivals. Seo Mongan turns to see Jin Gukbong already scrolling through his phone. He claims he's just gathering professional intel so the kids don't get misled. So Chongren just turns away, her shoulders shaking with silent laughter. Over the next stretch, the system broadcasts rise and fall. Other Korean challengers hand in average items for minor 3-digit multipliers. Nothing special, but get this, once the dust settles, one highly absurd fact remains. Aside from his perfect 100,000, the runner-up is just a leaf. That dream hemp leaf holds second place. Back at his campfire, he scrapes. He finishes eating the last of the fruit pulp. He isn't full, but satisfied. Now the real reward. He rubs his hands together and lifts the wooden lid. Warm firelight spills over a sleek, matte black metal bracer at the bottom. It is lined with soft fabric, featuring a golden firing port at the top. Seated inside that golden shell is a sharp, three-clawed grappling hook. The system screen blinks in his right eye, detailing the epic item. It is a wind-chasing claw with a 100-meter fiber cable. It retracts instantly with one button, guided through the air for maximum accuracy. This provides incredible stability. He lifts the heavy device out of the box. It is surprisingly light, yet the metal feels cold and solid under his thumb. This is 10 times better than the junk tool in his starter kit. You might see just a tool here, but he sees a tactical masterpiece. A 100-meter range means he can anchor to a cliff or drag objects. He can rip himself out of danger, using it to launch quick attacks or escapes. This is no toy. It is a god-tier item for his hit-and-run tactics. He slides the sleek bracer onto his right forearm, feeling the lining cling. It molds to his skin perfectly. A quick twist of his wrist proves it. His movement remains completely unhindered. He packs away the old starter hook as backup. Next, he starts his final preparations, tossing thick logs onto the dying fire. The bright flames roar back to life, illuminating the dark stone walls around him. He explored the entire island today without spotting any massive beasts, but silence is deceptive. Not seeing a threat doesn't mean it's not there. In this world, no amount of caution is too much. He crouches down and rakes the wood ash out from the campfire's base. Then he scoops a handful, tracing a continuous circle along the open mouth. Of the U-shaped hollow 3 boulders make, 2 fingers wide, no breaks, the alkalinity will sting small reptiles and insects, turning them away. On instinct, whether the bugs of the void sea respect that or not, it beats. Doing absolutely nothing, then he crawls into his sleeping bag, holding his dagger close. Along the edge, his back to the warm rock, the fire crackling 2 meters off. And the wire that's been pulled tight in him all day finally slackens as he watches the shadows dance. His mom must be sick with worry right now, 2.5 years here, and the mother of this world has been incredibly good to him. The first sense of belonging he's ever had, always tucking a tissue pack into his left pocket before he leaves, setting dishes on his right side when she washes. Them arranging the whole apartment around his right eye's field of view, as for his cheapskate father, never mind, he's laid eyes on him exactly once in those 2.5 years, and even the original owner's memory of him is a single word distant. None of it changes his plan. He will live and then scour this rotted world clean to stretch out his family's years and Korea's years with them. The firelight blurs as he closes his eyes and lets his breathing go long and even. In a research wingback on Blue Star, Yuk Jin sits with 2 screenshots side by side, the perfect Cloudberry on the left, Japan's flawed one on the right. He has run Korea's best analysis software across them frame by frame, scanning hue, saturation, texture, the juice's refractive index, and every quantifiable visual parameter sits inside the normal range of plant to plant variation. He takes off his glasses, pinches the bridge of his nose, and writes 2 lines on a scrap of paper that they are the same species in the same environment with no macroscopic visual difference, yet the quality verdicts are worlds apart. The pen hovers, then he adds a 3rd line that the boy saw something he and his instruments cannot. He drains his cold coffee, opens a fresh encrypted file titled with his name and the words left eye hypothesis, and watches the cursor blink on the empty page. Daybreak, he opens his eyes. With a dagger already laid flat across his chest, the camp is entirely quiet, the fire down to dark red embers trailing thin smoke. He sits up, his spine creaking from a night against stone, and looks to the ash ring, the line held unscattered by wind, but a few small blackish things sit at its edge. He leans in, 3 bugs, each 2 fingers long and entirely gray and black, limbs curled, dead as a doornail. No matter the world, bugs fear strong physical alkali, and the corner of his mouth twitches at the proof. The viewers who camped on their screens all night get a collective chill at 3 dead bugs, marveling that there really are bugs here and what would have happened without that ash. Co. Myung-won notes dryly that in the wild, it's the small, inconspicuous things that kill you, not the big beasts. Jinguk Bong yawns and tells him that if he'd said as much yesterday, he wouldn't be sitting here as an armchair critic. Today in the comment wall fills with laughter. His stomach is growling. Last night's scrap of pulp is long gone, so he packs his sleeping bag and heads for the At the north cliff, the vines he harvested yesterday are stripped completely bare, so he follows the eastern edge for a few minutes until another row of thick vines hangs down. Bearing a cluster of gray-green cloudberries, he knows the rhythm. He lies flat at the edge. He pulls the nearest vine up and checks the first berry. Gray spots, discard. The second is the same, but the third is clean. Talk about a lucky break. He sets it beside him and reaches for the vine again to pick a few more. His hand has barely touched it when a sharp screech tears down out of the sky. He drops flat and presses to the ground, dagger reversed. His breathing slows to almost nothing. The screech sweeps closer. Slowly, he turns his face up by inches, narrowing his eyes. A giant gray-brown bird of prey cuts past the cloud edge, sporting a wingspan near 4 meters and forktail wings sheathed in rock-textured feathers. The system panel names it for him, a rock feather kite. He freezes completely. It does not linger over the island, but dives straight for the base of the cliff. After a dozen seconds, with no second bird in sight, he crawls forward and eases a sliver of his body out over the edge. 30 or 40 meters down, a horizontal crevice has split the cliff face, packed with dead branches and mud into a bowl-shaped nest, and the rock feather kite squats in it with its head bowed. Tidying beside it, a few gray-white eggs lie exposed. His throat works on its own at the sight of real, solid protein. Cloudberries only refill water and a little sugar, making a barely passable base. An egg that size would restore his stamina. And his eye of destiny already swept it a moment ago, green, safe, edible. The trouble is the 30 or 40 meters of drop, and the massive bird sitting right next to the prize. The live stream chat begs him to be rational and not get reckless. Samyang Wan frowns, warning that a direct fight with a large flying creature gives him an extremely low survival rate in his state, especially with his vision defect on top of it. His advice is to pull back now and avoid unnecessary greed. Jin Gyuping says nothing, only staring, because on the feed, our protagonist neither climbs down nor retreats. He just lies at the edge, motionless. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. The bird stays put. He is not impatient. The longer it sits, the more patience this requires. A few more minutes pass and the rock feather kite finally moves, dipping its head to peck lightly at the eggs, then spreading its wings and lifting off toward the distant clouds, growing smaller and smaller until it is gone. Now he rolls over, springs up, and stretches his right arm out over the cliff, his wind-chasing claw port aimed down at the nest. He holds his breath and presses the switch. Brace yourselves, because that 3-clawed hook fires out, trailing its cable, dropping into the nest and locking its tips around a single egg. With a crisp click, he presses the button again. The cable hums and reels back at high speed, dragging the egg up and over the edge. He scoops it out of the air with his left hand, landing steady in his palm. Got it. It is bigger than his fist and heavy. He grabs the clean cloudberry he harvested and turns to run. No looking back. No hesitation, because he does not know that kite's hunting range, and he is not gambling on how long it takes to come home. He sprints all the way to the stone forest. The livestream is one solid cheer, calling it one shot, one kill, pure technical egg steal, with the chat cracking jokes about its debut, rubbing it right in Samyang Wan's face. Samyang Wan opens his mouth, holds it open a long moment, and manages to squeeze out that this counts as a he calls it a tactical evasion, but Jin Bong laughs, slapping his shoulder. Evasion, my foot. This is raiding the nest when they are weak. Beautiful work. The blue chongren egg lands cleanly. He used yesterday's reward to grab it from a distance, proving that sometimes the smartest fight is the one you do not have. That wise comment crowns the whole feat. Back at camp, he crouches by the fire. He rakes the embers, finding the charcoal underneath still holding some heat. He buries the egg in hot ash and charcoal, but that is not enough. So he strikes flint into a fresh handful of dry grass, feeding in thin firewood to let the heat work its way in while he pries open the clean cloudberry to sip its juice. 15 minutes later, he rolls the egg out of the fire with a branch, its shell steaming with gray ash. He taps it with the spine of his dagger. It cracks as steam hisses, and he pries the shell off in pieces, revealing a porcelain white color with charred yellow edges. It smells so good that he bites right in without waiting. The texture is firmer than a chicken egg, chewy and savory. The yolk is sandy and dense, sliding down easily as he chases it with a mouthful of cloud berry juice. His stomach finally feels full. He is about to finish the rest when the National Destiny Challenge announcement rings in his ears with yesterday's battle report, revealing a massive number of challenger deaths. The total reached 1469, with Korea losing 21 and America 13. Russia lost 11, Japan 17, and Saudi Arabia 33. The list rolls on. Every row is a tragic loss. Next, the cause of death breakdown lands. Parachute failures hit 47%, alongside environmental hazards like poisoning. And falling at 31, beast attacks at 18, and player conflicts at 4. That last figure glares at him, bringing a cold, sudden realization. He always knew the worst threat here was not the wild beasts. Other challengers are the real danger. Meanwhile, back in his home city in front of the television, Lee Mi sits with eyes red and ringed from crying. She has not moved since learning her son was drafted into this. Watching him skydive made her grip the remote with white knuckles, staying awake all night. Only now, watching him eat that roasted egg, does she finally breathe. She quietly mutters for him to eat slowly, since no one will steal it. She is just incredibly grateful he is alive and eating. Then, her doorbell rings. She opens the door to find 2 young people standing there in uniform. Their name tags Red Disaster Prevention Administration Task Force. They snap to attention, saluting, and announce they are there on orders. They came to visit the family of Comrade Emope, so she quickly invites them. Inside, their eyes sweep across the clean, neat, and highly orderly living room. The furniture is older but immaculate, with the television still showing her son. Rubbing her hands in embarrassment, she explains she is currently all alone at home. Husband is stationed out west and rarely returns, the young man asks gently if they face any hardships, but she quickly waves her hands. She insists they have more than enough, saying everything is perfectly fine. The country is struggling right now, so they should save support for the front lines or families in need. The young woman steps forward to speak. She gently hears how I Am Yope uploaded Korea's first perfect quality resource. It is not just a resource, it completely lifted the entire nation's morale. He is a true hero. The country cannot let its heroes bleed. They will not let his family suffer, she promises. Protecting them is their duty. Heavy footsteps soon echo down the hallway. Staff arrive with supplies. Logistics staff carry in boxes, stacking them neatly: rice, flour, and grain. Oil, canned food, clean water, and medicine. They salute her warmly, saying that her son is bringing Korea glory in the void. She must stay healthy. They tell her to contact the community. If she needs help, they will come. They turn and leave. She stands at the door, watching them go, looking down. She looks at the boxes with teary eyes. Meanwhile, inside the command center, Woo Choljun pushes the door open, smelling of smoke after a long night at the hub. Ju Guangpyong, the intelligence chief, meets him with yesterday's reports. He brings the casualty numbers and latest upload figures. He lowers his voice. He asks how the meeting went. Woo Choljun slumps heavily into his chair. He snorts coldly, asking how else it could have gone. Those foreign leaders saw Korea's heavy first-round losses, swarming in like vultures scenting blood. He taps a cigarette twice against his desk, noting the United States led the charge, with 7 or 8 of their lackeys trying to force Korea to sign. It is a so-called Global Resource Rebalancing Framework, a fancy name for a modern Plaza Accord demanding Korea surrender its strategic reserves. He wants Korea to open its resource channels. Ju Guangpyong clenches his fists. He asks what the leadership said. Woo Choljun stares at him for 3 seconds. He asks what he thinks, then says the commanders slammed the table. Korea bows to absolutely no one. If they want resources, they can come try and take them. Our warships are ready. Ju Guangpyong lets out a long breath. Woo Choljun cracks a rare smile, calling the timing an absolute gift. While those bullies were posturing, the global system announced the news. I Am Yope achieved a perfect quality, 100,000-fold critical strike, and he wishes. Ju Guangpyong saw their faces, especially the American sipping tea with shaking hands. Then his face turns serious. He asks if the boy's file is retrieved. Ju Guangpyong hands over a thick folder, adding that this one is practically raised inside their military system, making him one of their own. Woo Choljun breaks the seal and turns the pages. I Am Yope, 21, registered locally, a junior, studying archaeology at the Korean University of Science and Technology. His father, I Am Changyeon, is a sergeant first class serving out west. Serving 24 years on the border. Woo's hand pauses. 24 years. He spent 8. The Northwest himself and felt he had left half his life in that desert. In this, I Am Changyeon has guarded the nation's gate for 24. He reads on Motherly Me, a military dependent who settled in their hometown after her son's birth to Raise him alone, making his care easier. He turns to the medical report. His left eye is missing, fitted with a prosthetic monocular lens. Wu's hand stops. He closes the folder and sits in silence, then says it. Loud the IM family, father and son. The father has over 20 years serving. The son is one-eyed, yet still dragged away by the supreme will to fight for Korea. Survival is key, a family of loyal martyrs. Jo Gonpong nods, ready to speak, but Wee Chelan cuts in, admitting he deeply admires their sacrifice. Still, the fight for their destiny is about the survival of the entire country. Sentiment has no place here. Tapping the medical chart, he points out the blind spot. Losing half his vision is a severe blow. He might survive level 1, barely. But real danger waits on level 2 and level 3. His voice drops low. The kid had a stunning first day, sure, but the road ahead is nearly fatal. Jo Gonpong hesitates, struggling to find the words, then quietly makes a proposal. The father holds the border, while the son risks everything in another world. With only the mother left behind, maybe they should relocate the family. Sending them to the Western military region keeps them close to him. Wee Chelan nods and stands up in agreement. The frontline soldiers are bleeding. They cannot let the families back home feel abandoned or left out in the cold. He promises to contact the Western military base to make the arrangements. Meanwhile, in the stone forest, Linyi sits cross-legged, finishing his breakfast. Eggs for breakfast, a truly comfortable life. Then a sharp cry echoes from above. The sound makes him flinch so hard he almost chokes on his food. The feathered beast has returned. He immediately drops flat, but that is not enough. He grabs a handful of wood ash from the campfire, smearing it quickly. He covers his face, neck, and clothes, rubbing another fistful into his hair. He has no idea if the massive rock feather kite hunts by scent alone. But the roasted egg smell is strong. If it tracks that, he is dead. Soon he looks like a wild man who just climbed out of a chimney. On the live broadcast, he appears as a pathetic, ash-covered figure huddled low. But the viewers have a clear angle, seeing the beast circle the skies. It is gliding far to the northeast, nowhere near Linyi's location. The vast distance makes the live audience laugh at his extreme caution. They call him the master of playing dead at the slightest movement. People compare him to Jigon, who spent 30 minutes styling his hair after waking. That is dignity, but other viewers quickly defend Linyi's survival instincts. Staying alive is his only bottom line. Soon, the kite disappears into the clouds. He waits another 2 minutes before rising, ash falling from his face. He brushes off his dusty clothes and spits out a mouthful of grit, completely relieved. As he gets up, his left eye suddenly twitches with a strange sensation. He narrows his eye, instantly activating his Eye of Destiny. A red line appears. It spreads rapidly from a crevice, just 3 meters away from him. His pupil shrinks as the glowing lines branch out, splitting endlessly. Countless glowing threads weave a deadly web directly under the shaking island. A massive explosion erupts from deep below before he can even think. Instinct takes over. His legs drive him forward in a desperate leap. Gravel and dust blast into the sky as the ground behind him shatters. The crater rips open, half a second slower and he would be dead. Violent tremors throw him completely off balance, debris raining down all around him. The entire floating island is collapsing. No time to rest, he bolts forward. His gear clatters as the island crumbles behind him, falling into the void. Out of the corner of his eye, the stone forest where he slept is caving in and sinking. Inside the command center, alarms blare through the hall as a staffer leaps up, voice cracking, reporting a major geological collapse in the outermost floating island cluster of the Void Sea. Why? Cheljun braces against the command console, staring up at the giant screen, and asks for the extent. Still calculating, comes the reply, at least 133 level 1. Islands are fracturing. Challengers from multiple nations are in danger, and every eye in the room snaps to the screen, split into dozens of feeds, all shaking violently, ground splitting, dust flying. He asks how many of their own are caught in the chaos. 5, the staffer replies, pulling the relevant Korean feeds to the top. 063 Jangwi, 066 Maup, 081 Wang Senwu, 089 Du, and before the name finishes, one screen cuts to black. Wang Wu is confirmed fallen to his death, plunging the entire hall into absolute silence. Cheljun's jaw tightens. With Cheljun ordering the report to continue, the staffer reads that the United States has already lost 2 to falls, Saudi Arabia 3, Japan 1. The data keeps updating. While another screen goes dark, an American named Jason Brown is gone, on the United States. Feed, a massive man built like an ox, is forced right to the edge of his island. While the land shatters and sinks behind him, he swings his starter. Grappling hook at a small island across the gap, catching the rock wall, he grips the rope and swings out, but a violent updraft from the massive collapse hurls heavy debris into the sky, shearing the rope clean through. He plummets straight into the cloud sea before he can even scream. The feed goes black, leaving a mob of online keyboard warriors in total disarray. On his feed, the viewers watch a dusty figure sprinting with their hearts in their throats. The island peels away chunk by chunk behind him, falling into the cloud sea. The chat is a wall of people screaming to run. It is pure apocalypse, cliffs on every side. Where is he supposed to go? Som goes pale, lips trembling as a force this massive pushes beyond human limits. While Jin Gup Bong and So Chungran say nothing, staring in silence as all commentary grows useless. He is sprinting, the entire island crumbling right beneath him, rocks shed away into the cloud sea. The ground heaves up and drops out so that every violent shock forces him onto a new path. He cannot stop. Stopping means death. He looks up into the northwest, where a level 2 island hangs high above, the only way out, but a gap nearly 100 meters wide separates him, with a vertical drop of dozens of meters looming below. His wind-chasing claw cable is only 100 meters. Total. Will it even reach? A massive roar echoes below, and his slab of rock tilts upward. The angle is steepening, so he drops and grabs a crevice, clawing up on all fours toward the high side, knees gashing on sharp gravel, blood seeping. No time to care, just teeth gritted as he climbs. 4 meters, then 2, until he reaches the top. From the upturned rock to brace himself and stand, above him, a boulder the size of a car is falling. That is it. He pushes off with everything, launching himself into the air as the slab below shatters into dozens of fragments and rains down toward the cloud sea. The wind screams in his ears as he throws his right arm up, aiming the wind-chasing claw right at that falling rock. The three-pronged hook fires, bites in, and clamps tight. The cable snaps back and a brutal pull yanks. It fires and bites in, clamping tight, before the cable snaps back with a brutal yank, pulling him up with a tearing wrench through the bones of his right shoulder. He groans and grabs the arm guard with his left hand to spread the strain, his feet finding the rock surface, sinking with it, but buying him a few precious seconds. From here to the level 2 cliff is 50 or 60 meters, enough, and he raises his right arm to fire again, and the rock under him bucks as another fragment slams in from the side and both shatter at once. He steps into empty air, his support gone, and drops toward the cloud sea below. In the command center, everyone holds their breath, some turning their heads away, while children's fists clench until they creak, nails biting into palms, his figure on the screen falling against the sky full of the disintegrating island's debris. Back in his home city, Lai covers her mouth as her knees give out, and she collapses in front of the television, the cup on her table knocked over and spilling across the floor. On the western frontier, at an outpost, Im Chang-an has just come in from patrol, with frozen soil still on his boots, standing in the duty room doorway, clutching an old model phone, watching his son on the screen. His comrades gather around him, not daring to breathe. Falling, weightlessness wraps his whole body, the wind rushing up from below, his view full of tumbling gravel and white cloud. Fear, of course, but the will to live keeps his head strangely clear. No room to worry about much now. Time to gamble, and he triggers the eye destiny. The world in his left eye floods with color, and through the tumbling he forces his focus in one direction, toward that level 2 island. Gravel and air currents block his sight, and he cannot make anything out, but his left eye sees. Lower on the cliff, a thick green band of light is hanging from the edge of vine. Its green exceptionally bright, safe and sturdy, maybe 50 meters above. That's it, target locked. A sharp pain stabs his eye and he shuts it at once. Then he grits his teeth, wrestles his posture straight in midair, and lifts his straining right arm and aims the wind-chasing claw that way. The hook fires, breaks through the currents, and rides the faint airflow to the target. The 3 claws open and close, biting deep into the vine. The cable snaps taut and his body jerks to a stop, swinging out into open air. His right shoulder is a hair from leaving its socket, the sleeve lining digging into his skin. He hangs there, right arm strung up by the cable, left hand clamped on the arm guard, while the wreckage of the entire level 1 island drags its dust down into the cloud sea. The kicked-up mist surging dozens of meters high, his body turns. Slowly, the boundless clouds see beneath his feet, the level 2 cliff above his head. On Korea's live stream, there is silence for 3 full seconds, and then the comments erupt like a volcano. The chat detonates, screaming who else, and everyone on their feet confessing they had already typed eulogies. The room arguing over how to address him with proper reverence until it lands on Brother I. Jingbong stands and slams the commentary desk hard enough to bounce the microphone, shouting well done, that this isn't luck, this is skill. Samuan grips the table edge and wipes the sweat from his brow and says he retracts his earlier judgment, that pulling off an extreme maneuver like that in a hopeless spot is a true miracle of survival. His fingertips trembling as he admires his nerve, so Chongrin wipes the corner of her eye and he turns away with a bright smile. Back in her home city, Lai kneels before the television, her son suspended in midair over an endless cloud sea. He is alive. Hanging up there, still moving. She simply cannot hold on any longer, desperately covering her own face with both hands. The emotional tension from all night finally snaps. An intense mix of fear, despair, and pure relief surges right out of her aching chest into heart-wrenching wails. As long as her precious boy is still drawing breath, it is entirely enough. At the western outpost, I.M. Chang'an holds the phone tight to his chest, the feed still shaking as a dozen of his comrades let out earth-shaking roars. These young soldiers hug, jump, and shake his arm, while several of them rush right outside to roar at the mountains that the old squad leader's son is unbelievable, like father. Like son, I.M. Chang'an stands completely frozen, the screen light illuminating a rugged face etched with deep wrinkles that do not move at all, except that deep inside those bloodshot eyes a thick layer of hot tears has gathered. Meanwhile, inside the main command center, the cheering nearly lifts the roof. Commander Wei Zichuan finally unclenches his tight fists, his palms slick with cold sweat, letting out a heavy breath of stale air, turning to the seats below the screen to call for quiet, ordering all data on this massive collapse summarized immediately. Just 3 minutes later, Julian Pyong rushed with a freshly printed brief showing the event covered the outermost level 1 cluster of the Void Sea, catching 5 of theirs. 2 survived, 063 Jiang Wei and 066 Mao. 3 died, and Wei Zichuan's jaw tightens as he asks for the final global figures. Julian Pyong reports that 679 challengers faced them. The collapse with 51 survivors, representing just 7.51%. Less than 10%, Wei Chunjun immediately orders that all the compensation work begin at once. By the standard, not a single person missed. Right then, several glaring highlighted messages drift across Korea's feed. The United States sneers that the gear totally carried him and his own strength is absolutely nothing. South Korea chimes in, claiming their challenger would have survived with the same claw. The Korean section answers back within seconds, stating the equipment was fairly traded for with quality and that their own legendary challenger Jason had standard claw rope too. Where was his survival? The American handles go silent before the crowd buries them on Void Sea. Look closely at this. His situation is incredibly dire. His arm is pulled. He dangles at the end of the cable, feeling a sharp pain in his shoulder joint as if it is being torn open. Gritting his teeth, he presses the switch on his arm guard with his left hand. Suddenly, the mechanical cable starts retracting inch by inch, pulling his body draws slowly upward. The dozens of meters stretch out endlessly, 30, 20. 10. The steep cliff face creeps closer, until a thick layer of green moss appears right in front of him. He lunges with his left hand, catching the cliff edge, his fingers sinking into the soil. He kicks his legs, flips his body, and rolls over the lip onto the ground of the level 2 island. He sprawls flat, chest heaving, his back pressed against damp, soft moss. Solid ground runs from his spine out to his limbs as he stares up at the sky, panting. He survived, damn lucky to steal another day. He lies there a full 2 minutes until his heartbeat settles, then sits up slowly and tests his right arm. It hurts, but it is a strain, not dislocated. Stroke of luck, the skin on his right knee is scraped, dark red blood seeping through the fabric. It is a small wound, but in a world without medicine, even minor this can be fatal. He brings up the panel in his right eye, which reads his name as M. Yop. His nationality is Korean. His vitals are imperfect, with his pollution level at 0.02%. Spirit grid 100. He freezes on that 0.02 because it always read flat 0 before. Where did this pollution even come from? He mentally runs through everything he has eaten since yesterday, all of it. is confirmed clean by his eye of destiny, so it is not the food, finally his. Gaze drops to his injured right knee. He narrows his left eye to trigger the eye of destiny, and at the wound's edge sit a few tiny gray spots. He goes quiet. They cling to the wound, not something he swallowed, but something that seeped in. From the world around him, his body's pollution is clearly tied to those gray spots. After all, even a simple scrape can pollute him, which means high-dimensional energy. Invasion is everywhere in the Void Sea, or rather, the Void Sea itself is a high-dimensional world, and he bets that from the first second everyone landed. Their bodies were already in contact with this, the only difference being who dies fast and who holds on. He does not linger on the thought, some of the first batch have lived here over 10 days, and at 0.02 he is far from death, so rather than dwell on it, he solves what is right in front of him, standing to brush the dirt and moss off himself. He looks around at a place nothing like a level 1 island. Under his feet is a stretch of moss, running into a dense thicket of bushes. Patches of forest show deeper in, with trees so thick a few people could not ring them. With their arms and rolling hills off in the distance, by the official classification, a level 2 island runs dozens of times the area of a level 1. Larger than a small town by his guess, more resources, more cover, more threats. When he scanned this island from the air on the way down, there were golden light spots on it, and a dozen red dots ring the gold. Talk about risk versus reward. Danger right beside each other, but his first priority is a temporary place to hold up, a water source, shelter, somewhere to spend the night. He tightens his pack and checks the wind-chasing claw, 3 claws intact, the cable retracting. Fine, he slides the dagger back into his belt and starts walking into the interior of the floating island. He steps into the jungle of the level 2 floating island, his right knee throbbing where the pant leg has glued itself to the raw skin. Every tug of the fabric brings a sharp, bright pain. He does not slow down in a place whose dangers he has not mapped. The fastest thing he can do for himself is learn the ground, so he keeps moving and reads it as he goes. By now, he has worked out the microrhythm of the eye of destiny, a quick blink, frame of sight, then off. Then a few steps, then looking again, which makes his route through the trees look insane to anyone watching. A flat, clear apron of moss opens to his front left, an obvious path, but he cuts sideways into the brush on the right instead, then swings wide around a cluster of plump, dripping berries glistening right in front of him. The Korean livestream fills with confusion at his weird pathing. Half the room is convinced the wound has gone septic and cooked his brain, the other half snapping back that he clearly has his reasons and they should remember the egg. Hearing none of it, he stops, his ears catching a thread of running water off to his front right, and that gets his full attention, so he changes direction and hacks the blocking vines apart with his dagger. The final leaf folds aside and the scene shifts to a stream 3 or 4 meters wide, blocking his path. The water is clear enough to count the pebbles at the bottom, while weeds sway with the current. Silver scales flash on the surface. Fish, he walks over quickly while the system panel names them. They are silver shuttlefish. The Korean stream chat lights up at the sight of running water and live fish, sure he is safe and telling him to cook. But Seo Mongan pours cold water on their excitement. He warns that wild rivers hide dangerous underwater currents and deadly parasites. Worse yet, the boy's single eye lacks stereoscopic depth. Refraction off the water will turn every distance and depth he sees into a complete lie. If he tries to spearfish with a branch, his hit rate is practically 0. The hostile overseas streams that were holding their breath immediately pile. In the second his brutal analysis lands, they mock him, a half-blind man wants to catch fish, and that the cripple's luck has finally run dry. Jin Gubong's knuckles turn white with veins popping on his neck. He is halfway out of his chair to fight back when the survivor does something on screen that nobody expects. He stands by the stream with his left eye focused in the clear water. Fine gray spots drift everywhere, dense as floating silt. When he looks at those silver shuttlefish, he finds the same horror. Gray mist clings to their scales. He curls his lip, disgusted. This water is contaminated, and the fish carry that poison inside. No choice, he heads straight upstream along the bank, 100 meters, then 200, until the water ends at a mossy furred crevice in the rock with fresh groundwater welling out in a steady pour. A quick sweep with his left eye reveals a pure light green aura. There is not a single gray spot, making it so clean that nothing can survive here. He crouches and tests the water, finding it icy cold. Rolling up his stiff, bloody right pant leg, he cups the clear water. He grits his teeth, he scrubs off the dried mud and scabs, then he checks it again with the eye of destiny. The gray spots are still sitting in his broken skin. What a joke, expecting to rinse off such a energy with water. High-dimensional pollution will not wash off. He cuts a strip from his shirt hem with a dagger and binds the wound tight. Unslinging his pack, he fills a small folding iron pot to the brim straight from the source, drinking in long swallows until his parched throat finally feels human again. So Chongren's eyes brighten on the feed as she points out that he did not act blindly, smart, going upstream guaranteed safe. Drinking water, his infection risk plummeted instantly. This is not just basic self-care, but long-range thinking. Seo Mongan opens his mouth but cannot push a single word out. From a wilderness survival standpoint, the logic of finding the source is completely airtight. The Korean crowd that was wringing its hands minute ago turns around instantly. They brag that this is the detailed work of a seasoned veteran, demanding that the foreign haters show themselves and keep talking trash. When one foreign viewer actually replies, they are told to bark like a dog before going silent. Petty maybe, but it is their victory now and they will gladly take it. He shoulders the full pot and heads back, his left eye flickering on and off as he walks. A fish the length of his forearm slides past his feet. Gray spots cover its tail. Rejected. Another leaps clear of the surface, its gills caked in gray. No way. He carries the pot in one hand while keeping his other empty, and every time a fish swims past, he stops to look it over carefully, shakes his head and moves on. This look but don't touch routine throws the live stream into fresh confusion, with the chat deciding he must be picking out a fish bride. Meanwhile, foreign feeds insist he simply can't catch anything and is just covering up his failure. Over in the third disaster prevention research group, Yukjin sits hunched over at his workstation with his eyes completely locked on him, fingers hammering the keyboard as his recording software fires off screenshot after screenshot. Every time he pauses to study a fish, Yukjin grabs the frame, enlarges it, and compares it to the last, to any normal person. These fish look exactly the same in size and movement. The first one was rejected. The second was rejected too. Finally, Yukjin drags his glasses off and tosses them down. He is filtering them, Yukjin mutters, by a standard he cannot even begin to read. Fruit yesterday, fish today, and that bizarre wandering route before that. The only explanation is that he sees something they all miss. What exactly is it? Yukjin asks the empty room. Suddenly his gaze sweeps the water and he freezes 3 meters ahead, hiding in a pile of pebbles among the weeds. A fat fish, nearly a forearm long, roots slowly along the bottom. As he activates the eye of destiny, its entire body glows a pale green. Gills, scales, belly, not a single gray spot. Clean. He knows this is the one. Carefully he sets the water-filled iron pot down and wedges it between 2 stones. Then he straightens up and raises his right arm. The Korean stream has already guessed exactly what is coming next. One viewer jokes that this is like using a cannon on a mosquito, while another just screams to fire the cannon. He adjusts his angle, aiming his wind-chasing claw and presses the trigger with his thumb. The 3-pronged hook punches straight through the surface and strikes that massive silver shuttlefish dead on its thrashing tail, kicking up a heavy spray. He releases the switch and presses it again. The cable screams back at full speed, dragging the fish right out of the water and landing it flat on the grassy bank. Top-tier ingredients only need the simplest preparation, he figures. He walks over, grabs a heavy stone, and brings it down right on the fish's head. The tail twitches twice and goes still. Finally, some meat. The Korean livestream goes wild, and a hilarious running joke starts up. Pretending the wind-chasing claw is complaining about being used as a simple, glorified fishing rod instead of soaring across the sky. Naturally, the haters are absolutely seething. Their bitter comments flood the screen, sneering that he only knows how to rely on high-tech gear, claiming he would have starved without his wind-chasing claw. They call him a fake who needs attachments to survive, but the Korean fans don't even bother arguing. They just remind everyone that he earned the claw fair and square, mockingly asking if the jealous viewers have won anything themselves yet. Back in the studio, Mongan shakes his head, sighing at such a wasteful use of a precious legendary tool on a simple chore, but Jinbu Bang slaps the table, laughing that he is just making the absolute best use of his gear. To him, refusing to adapt is the only real stupidity. Meanwhile, So Chang-gran keeps her calm smile, noting that when surviving, sheer efficiency beats everything. With that settled, he scans the bank for his next target. Soon, another silver shuttlefish appears just as large as the first. Same shot, same result. He crouches down. He drives the blade down to gut his catch, sending a massive ripple across the water. From beneath a mossy boulder at the bottom, a silver shadow glides out, and his hand freezes because that is a giant silver shuttlefish, nearly 1 meter long. This beast has none of the usual fear. Its streamlined body throws off a cold, sharp gleam under the water, swimming the shallows with absolute confidence. It moves like it owns this stream. His left eye narrows, glowing a bright, vivid green, even brighter than before. Not a single gray spot, a top tier ingredient. His eyes light up and his throat dry swallows on its own. The heavens are practically delivering this meal on a silver platter. He stands tall, raising his right arm to aim directly at the target. The hook shoots out, but the giant silver shuttlefish twists mid-strike, batting the claw aside. The 3 steel prongs slam into rotten weeds instead. Worse, it does not even flee, it swaggers right up to the bank, lifts its massive head, puffs its gills, and opens its wide mouth, spitting a heavy jet of water that hits his leg directly. The Korean livestream goes absolutely wild, with the chat screaming that the fish is mocking him. The physical damage is 0, but the sheer disrespect is off the charts. One viewer claims he sees 30% mockery and 70% pure contempt in its eyes. The entire room vows this fish must end up in the pot tonight, or they cannot rest. He wipes the muddy water off his face, feeling the anger flare up inside. Is he really about to get outplayed by a fish? He retracts the cable and aims. Again, fire, fire. 2 consecutive shots, but the massive target easily dodges left and right with insane reflexes. He drags up nothing but another load of useless weeds. The fish floats by the bank, gills pulsing, clearly mocking the 2-legged human on the dry land. He takes a deep breath, forcing his anger down. Fine. A straight line burst is not enough. If it wants to play mechanics, he puts the wind-chasing claw away and reaches back for a 10-meter grappling hook on his backpack, a basic starter tool. The entire livestream goes absolutely quiet with confusion. If high-tech gear cannot catch it, how will a basic hand-thrown hook help? He grabs the rope, swings it twice, and hurls the heavy iron hook hard into the water behind the target. It crashes down with terrible accuracy, but creates a massive splash. The startled fish bolts away, heading in the exact wrong direction. He has been waiting for this exact moment. He snatches a stone off the bank and hurls it with all his might toward the escape route. The rock smashes the water right in front of the beast, while the hook splashes behind it. Panicked, the fish thrashes its tail on pure survival instinct, launching itself high out of the water the moment it hangs. In midair, he calculates the perfect trajectory. His left hand slaps the weapon trigger. The wind-chasing claw shoots forward, spearing the target right out of the sky. The metal claws snap locked, and the heavy fish splashes back down, thrashing violently and churning up thick mud, but the line is already tight, and there is absolutely no escape. The entire setup executed in one smooth flow. The stream freezes in absolute disbelief. Then, the comments crash down like an avalanche, everyone yelling that he read the target like an open book, that this is pure skill, not luck. They even joke that the fish brought high agility to a tactical battle. Somebody crowns it the art of war of fishing. It looks like a cheap AI script destined to get buried instantly. Samang-won catches his sliding glasses in complete shock, muttering that baiting such a forced kill should be flat out impossible. Jinuk-bong roars that forcing prey directly into a firing lane is masterclass tactical literacy, and so Chongren applauds enthusiastically, noting that it is not just tactics but composed focus. After a string of failures, he kept his head. Now he plants his feet wide left hand gripping his bracer to distribute the massive strain as he hauls. Get up here. Silver shuttlefish carves a deep, muddy furrow across the wet grass. Still thrashing, he picks up a heavy stone and walks over. You sprayed him, yet you dare to keep dodging. He aims straight at the fish's head, his hand rising and falling twice. Blunt and final. After those heavy thuds, the massive fish lies completely still, as if it just finished military basic training. He tosses the stone aside, letting out a long, heavy breath. The satisfying warmth of a successful hunt spreads through him. He then draws his dagger and crouches by the stream to scale, gut, and clean all 3 fresh trophies. Once finished, he snaps off a sturdy branch, scraping away the twigs and sharp thorns to easily thread the heavy catch through their gills. The 1-meter giant and 2 forearm-sized fish weigh heavily across his shoulder, with the water-filled iron pot in his other hand. He narrows his eyes toward the dense jungle, the meal finally sorted, with only one thing left, a place to settle. Venturing deep into the trees, he carries the heavy fish on his shoulder and the iron pot in his left hand, heading for higher ground at the island's center, where the chances of finding a dry cave are much better. But his path gets weird again. After 20 meters, he stops short, cuts a 90-degree angle, and shoves into the waist-high thorns on his right. Then, a dozen meters further on, he traces an irregular arc around a small, perfectly flat, dry patch of fallen leaves. The live chat is back to groaning at his strange movements. A few of them are getting seasick from the zigzagging, swearing their grandfathers walk exactly like this after half a bottle of liquor. Saming Wan shakes his head, pointing out that he has walked at least 50 extra meters just to dodge a flat patch of ground, claiming that aimless detours while carrying heavy loads waste physical strength. And that wasted strength is lethal in the wild. Jinnuk Bong strokes his chin and actually agrees for once, knowing special operations inside out, yet even he cannot read any logical reason into this path. He has no idea what they are saying. But a few dozen meters ahead, his feet stop dead the moment he triggers his Eye of Destiny. A massive red aura floods his left eye's vision, over 100 meters ahead, and a sharp sting drives straight into the back of his eyeball, forcing him to shut it immediately. The dense trees block his direct line of sight, and the screen in his right eye shows no identification, but that massive crimson signature is larger than a brown bear, signaling a fatal threat. He holds his breath, bracing the pot with his left hand, gripping the fish pole on his shoulder with his right, and presses flat against the nearest tree trunk without a single heartbeat of hesitation. After a few seconds pass, he steals one quick, cautious glance. With his left eye, the massive beast hasn't moved at all, showing no sign of leaving. If it won't go, he gladly will. No, he's not scared. This is just a strategic retreat. He tiptoes incredibly lightly on the ground. Once he has put a dozen careful steps between them, he turns and slips away at high speed in the complete opposite direction. This sudden, panicked bird routine utterly bewilders everyone. The chat, unable to spot a single moving leaf in right in front of him, the international stream floods in, mocking that the Korean coward got spooked by the wind, claiming he ran from a shadow. The Korean crowd boils, wanting to fight back but not knowing what he is fleeing from. Then, while the trolls are still spamming, a terrifying roar erupts from the hills. Behind him, a sound wave tears through the dense forest and flushes distant flock of birds into the sky. The whole feed seems to shudder with it. The comments explode, the Korean side howling for the foreign haters to come back out and keep barking now that they have gone silent, calling this not cowardice but foresight and top-tier scouting. One viewer even apologizes for the grandfather joke. In the third research group, Yuk Jin sits motionless, replaying his sudden halt, his escape, and that terrifying roar in slow motion over and over. The roar came from over 100 meters away, he reasons. The wind is southbound and he was downwind, so no scent could have carried. The dense forest blocked all sight, and the beast only roared after he had already pulled back. His breathing goes heavy. It was not intuition. His body reacted only after confirming a target, and combined with the baffling route, it means he did not sense danger. He saw it. He logs it in a file under left eye hypothesis, suspecting the subject's left eye likely carries an energy vision that penetrates physical obstacles. Then pushes up his glasses, his stare feverish, and asks how many more surprises he is hiding. In the jungle, he shivers for no reason at all. Who Earth is thinking about him? He quickens his pace, walking briskly without a backward look, and only after a solid 200 meters, well clear of that area, does he let his shoulders drop a little. The hills are out, the cave plan is scrapped, and he needs a new spot for the night. 10 minutes later, his pace finally eases. 2 giant trees stand in the jungle ahead, trunks so thick it would take 5 or 6 grown adults to encircle them with their arms, crowns punching up into the clouds. Past 50 meters, blotting out the sky. The gap between them is 30 meters, the roots of one have twisted into a roomy natural hollow over 2 meters deep, tall enough to crouch inside. Finding a dry layer of soil, he scans it by reflex. With his left eye, a few gray spots, but nothing serious, the kind of thing he cannot fully dodge anywhere out here. He studies the surroundings again, his gaze resting for a few seconds on the space between the 2 trees, a plan already forming. Then he walks to the hollow, sets down the fishbowl, and places the pot of clean, Water on a flat stone, he rolls his aching right shoulder but does not sit to rest. He draws his dagger, gathering dead branches of every thickness from nearby, because the first priority is fire and a full stomach. The Korean stream exhales in relief at the sight, glad he found a place, calling the hollow secure, noting that compared to Giant next door, who is still fighting bugs, he is practically on vacation, telling him to build a proper long-term shelter, so he stops running every day. Elsewhere, Chang-gran looks admiringly at the busy figure on screen and praises his astonishing adaptability, noting that when the plan changed, he found a fast alternative. However, Sa Ming-wung does not agree. He grants that the hollow is effortless and the giant tree forms a natural wall for defense, reflecting the heat, but the drawbacks are absolutely lethal too. The damp forest floor breeds venomous insects and snakes crawling toward warmth when the night chills down. Worse, that semi-open mouth means if something bigger blocks his only exit in the dark, he has nowhere to run. Hearing this, Yupin only sneers, telling expert Seo not to speak too soon, since this kid never plays by common sense, and hoping the man's glasses survive the slapping his face is about to take, he brings back a huge armful of dry fallen leaves, crumbling them to powder between his hands, then pulls out flint and scrapes down with the dagger, dropping sparks into the tinder. He bends and breathes on it gently. Practice has made this look easy. Flames climb within moments, feeding in twigs bit by bit until the fire steadies and the orange light pushes back the damp chill. He sits cross-legged, his gaze landing on the 1-meter-long giant silver shuttlefish. He draws the dagger, lining it up on the fattest part of the belly to carve off a piece and ease his intense hunger, and just like that, he completely freezes. He stares at the meat with his throat bobbing, but in the end, he swallows hard and puts the dagger away. He stands, cuts a few large plant leaves nearby, and wraps the giant fish and one of the small ones separately, laying them on a shaded, well-ventilated rock. Eating the big catch is just too wasteful, he mutters, planning to save it to boost his performance tonight, and those words carry clang to the ears of millions on the Korean feed. The chat floods, begging him to just eat it, that he's half dead and who cares about performance, a wall of viewers admit. They are crying at their screens because he is risking his life to scrape together better things for the country. Right on schedule, the overseas trolls swarm in, calling the Korean player a fine actor, forcing sentiment over a fish he simply could not finish. Hypocrites who cannot even land a meal but still want face. Honestly, that cheap bait stings every fan watching, but before they can start cursing, Jin Gukbong slaps his papers off the desk and stands. That is absolute garbage, he yells, his voice through the microphone setting everyone's eardrums buzzing. Those profitrotted cowards over there do not understand a single thing. He just survived a near-death fall. His strength is wrung dry. His right leg is torn open. He needs high-energy food more than anyone alive, and he still did not eat it because he values Korea over his own life. People who only grasp robber logic will never understand what Korean heritage truly means. Every word lands like a thunderclap, so Changren speaks up softer than Jin Gukbong, but cutting straight to the heart in a way some nations will never understand in a lifetime. There's a kind of faith where even in hell a man holds up the morning sun for his own people. He is not merely surviving alone, he is fighting for Korea's future. Now the audience is boiling over. Fierce counterattacks. After one relentless volley, the overseas trolls are crushed and scattered. Outside the hollow, he whittles 2 forked branches, planting them on either side of the fire, laying a straight branch across as a simple grill. He brings over a forearm-length silver shuttlefish, running the spit through its mouth and out the tail, and sets it over the flame. On the rack it goes. As it roasts, fine oil bubbles beat along the skin, grease dripping into the fire, hissing up in white smoke as the rich smell of meat fills the air, and he turns the spit every now and then to make sure it cooks evenly. 12 minutes later, the entire fish is a perfect golden brown, crispy on the outside, and he sets the iron pot by the fire too. After all, a survivor needs hot water. He is doing this wilderness thing with style. Talk about some real refinement. He lifts the sizzling fish right off the spit, completely ignoring the heat. He tears off a massive piece and crams it in, panting through the heat. The incredibly rich, savory fat floods his mouth as he takes huge bites. He swallows with pure satisfaction. Meanwhile, the Korean chat room completely flips out. Viewers who were weeping a moment ago are now just staring and gulping helplessly. One fan admits his instant meal suddenly tastes like dry paper. Another claims his very soul drifted away when that delicious fish oil dripped off. Someone else is crying so hard that tears are literally running straight into their mouth. Sharp-eyed viewers check other regional streams and return with some highly amusing news. Apparently, the Japanese contestant Matsusha is stuck crunching on raw, juicy beetles over there. Meanwhile, the Indian challenger is currently running for his life from a massive wild boar. Even their neighbor Guy only managed to find a couple of sour wild fruits after half a day. He eats them with a terrible grimace. Honestly, besides the seasoned first batch survivors, absolutely nobody in this second group has it as good. He strips the large fish down to a clean skeleton, kicks the bones into the fire to erase the evidence, and takes a slow sip of warm water. Stuffed and happy, he leans back against the rough bark. With his eyes closed, just a quick rest to recharge his energy and calm his nerves. 10 minutes later, he snaps his eyes open, stands up nimbly, and draws his sharp dagger. With the daylight fading, he plunges right back into the thick, dark jungle. He grabs a tough, flexible green vine, yanking it hard before slicing it off at the root. He coils and loops it around his neck, then gathers heavy fallen branches off the forest floor. For the branches still on the trees, he carves deep notches into them with his dagger. Then he drives his heel down hard until they snap, repeating this as he moves through the woods. Watching the live feed, the commentator Soam finally sits up straight with a look of pure relief. His face softens as he mutters, "You finally figured it out," he loudly announces. That the survivor has exposed the Hollow's major flaw and his true goal. In gathering these materials is perfectly clear. He is setting up dangerous tripwires. Round the outer perimeter, backed by sharp, inverted wooden spike traps, a standard defense. For deep jungle survival, if a wild beast approaches, it will snag the wire. While the heavy spikes deal real damage, giving him precious seconds to react, Soam takes a slow sip of tea. Notes that the guy's adaptability is honestly top tier. This strategy is incredibly rock solid. On screen, the challenger sweeps wide through the forest, dragging a huge load of vines and thick branches back to the base of the massive tree. He dumps the pile right into the narrow gap between the twin trunks. Then, he brushes the dirt off his hands and approaches the other giant tree, the one without any hollows. He stares straight up, tracing the massive trunk all the way to the canopy dozens of meters high. Question marks flood the stream. Somi-wan's commentary completely catches in his throat. The man takes 2 steps back, raises his right arm, and aims his wind-chasing claw. Straight up, he hits the button, sending the 3-pronged hook flying high into the air. It locks onto a thick branch 20 meters up. He yanks the cord to confirm it's secure, then activates the retraction. The wire tightens and his feet leave the forest floor, sending his entire body flying upward as if he just stepped onto a high-speed elevator. He rises up in a blink, bracing his soles against the bark to stand steady where the main trunk first splits, the branch intersection forming a natural hollow with a bed of dry leaves at the bottom. He crouches down and sweeps. With his hand, it is flat and roomy, enough for a grown man to lie down and rest, and he raises his eyebrows, pleased, sleeping on the ground with venomous snakes and bugs is a form of torture he definitely wants to avoid. At the commentary desk, Seo Mong, who was just preaching ground defense science, goes completely dead silent, his mouth hanging open and his cheeks flushing bright red. After 5 seconds of staring blankly, the man quietly lifts his cup and takes a tactical sip to cover his embarrassment. The audience catches on and goes wild laughing, deciding a true master of stealth never lives on the first floor. Every time Seo opens his mouth, our guy does the exact opposite, making Seo's jinxing power truly legendary. Someone even jokes that thorns must be at the bottom of his cup from how hard he swallowed. Jin Gupbong roars with laughter beside him, saying the kid is a good lad and Seo misjudged him. This time, Seo sets down his thermos, throws up his hands, and admits with a bitter smile that he was too rigid. This kid is just impossible to predict by normal logic, so Chongrin fights down her own laugh, trying to smooth it over that. Conventional judgment is fine, but the trump cards in his hands let him step way outside the norm. In the third research group, Yuk Jin sits with his fingers laced under his chin, looks at the flushed face on the screen, and lets out a cold snort. Totally humiliated, he says, pushing up his glasses with a fanatic light in his eyes. What could those mediocre fools possibly understand? In this entire world, only he truly understands our hero. Half crouched in the depression, he runs the math fast. This is an excellent shelter, dozens of Meters of height keep him safe from both damp ground miasma and creatures that hunt by scent, and with the wind-chasing claw, nobody else can climb up while he can drop and rise in seconds. The drawbacks, however, are just as lethal. High places run cold, the nighttime temperature up here is far lower than on the ground, and he cannot light a fire in a tree without simply roasting himself. Plus, the open edge means one bad roll in his sleep sends him over, still better than the hollow below. If there is a problem, you solve it, so he gets to work pulling a dagger, straddling a thick branch, and carving perfectly sized slots into several limbs with quick, clean strokes. Then he reattaches the cable and slides right back down. Back at his material pile, he trims the excess forks off the thick branches and scrapes away the stinging thorns. He straightens the thin vines into loops, slinging them across his body like a bandolier, before taking flight again to the branch 20 meters up. Unloading the vines, he points his right arm down, aiming the wind-chasing claw at the heap on the ground to fire the hook, which bites into a thick branch, retracting the line to hoist the wood up toward the crown. The Korean chat immediately erupts into fresh jokes, calling his tool a crane. The running joke now is the wind-chasing claw protesting that its high-end combat gear is being worked like a cheap tower crane. The viewers agree that practicality is king, and a claw that can haul wood is a good claw. With everything hauled up, he turns into a ruthless old carpenter, laying the branches flat along the edge, locking them into the slots he carved and lashing. He lashes the joints tight, crossing and reinforcing them with flexible vines. Over and over, he wraps them until a simple guardrail rings the hollow. He shoves it hard, solid. Now he is ready to head back down to the ground. Next, he cuts broad plant leaves, hoisting them up to layer inside the rail as a windbreak. Snapping twigs from the giant tree, he weaves them onto the outside. These serve as camouflage. To sleep softer, he clears out the debris. Gathering plenty of dry leaves from nearby, he carries them up to bed the hollow. With the bed ready, he grabs his backpack from the ground and hauls it up. Pulling out his sleeping bag, he spreads it out in a flash. Done. Nodding to himself as he looks around, he feels like a total survival genius. Patting himself on the back, he drops down and looks up from below. The safety rail blends cleanly into the crown, looking completely natural from below. Meanwhile, the Korean chat is losing its mind, calling him a wilderness master. They are utterly amazed by his clever external camouflage. While others freeze, he is living in a high-rise duplex. Some joke that this infrastructure mania is just a Korean talent. The sky darkens and night falls, causing the temperature to plummet. He slides down the cable to the ground, where the fire is almost dead. Feeding in dry wood, he blows gently underneath until the flames climb up once more. Grabbing his last silver shuttlefish, he gets ready for a feast. Skewering it on a branch, he sets the meat over the open fire. The oil drips, white smoke rises, and a mouth-watering aroma drifts into the night. Once it is roasted, he digs in with his hands and feasts happily. His stomach has been completely empty after a long afternoon of labor. No seasoning is needed when the fish tastes this incredibly fresh. In a flash, the fish is picked bare and the bones are tossed in. Wiping his mouth after a loud burp, he walks to the shaded stone. Lifting the leaves off the stone, he reveals the massive meter-long fish. It lies there quietly with not a single gray spot on it. Staring at the perfect snow-white flesh in its belly, his throat bobs instinctively. Carrying it to an open patch of ground, he raises his wrist. With a quick press, a pale blue light projects from his terminal. A translucent pale blue frame projects out, wrapping around the giant fish. A panel in his right eye immediately reads the scanning data. One giant silver shuttlefish detected. The system asks him to confirm upload. Without a single second of hesitation, he presses the upload button. The light frame contracts, and the fish scatters into points of light. Immediately, a system announcement blares in everyone's ears the second it disappears. Korean challenger Yope has successfully uploaded rare resources into the system. Detecting the perfect quality fish triggers an unbelievable critical hit. This critical hit triggers a massive multiplier of 50,000 times. Stunned, he sits there in absolute shock, counting on his fingers. One of those giant fish weighs easily 30 to 40 pounds total. Multiplying that by 50,000 gives a number his brain cannot compute. So he just scratches his head and gives up on the math. Meter-long silver shuttle fish pour out of the void all at once, sending a heavy, fishy reek rolling Across the entire square, their bodies piling into a shimmering silver hill of flesh, the logistics crew freezes before breaking into a roar, a supervisor screaming into his walkie-talkie to scramble every cold chain truck with it. Reach before the catch spoils. Over on the Korean livestream, the chat turns to one ecstatic blur with a running joke that his silly finger counting just exposed the only weakness of a god. Local fishermen declared that this round belongs to them, daring anyone to call them empty-handed ever again. Naturally, the foreign feeds lose their minds, with pure jealousy dripping right off the screen. Absolute chaos. A chorus of accusations claims cheating or some system loophole demanding the results be cancelled, and the entire hall handed over to them. Jimbuk Bong can't stand it. He slams his desk and lets those foreign streams have it through his microphone, roaring that blaming a loophole for your own empty hands is like a man who can't relieve himself blaming the earth for having no gravity, adding that the weak should train more instead of begging for attention. But so Chungrin lands a sharper blow with a much gentler voice, saying she understands how certain countries feel, watching others feast while you swallow your own spit naturally creates a gap, and the polite word for it is simply incompetent rage. The duo pours gasoline on Korean morale, and under the fierce barrage, the overseas trolls get scorched without any room to fire. Back in a quiet home in H City, the screen's glow lights up Lai's face. Her son sits by his campfire in the footage, on the right side of the screen, and unbroken wall of praise scrolls past his name, her eyes well with tears, but her whole face shines with relief and pride. The boy on that screen is no longer the one-eyed teenager who needed her watching over him at every turn. He has become a true hero of Korea, in the third research group of the Disaster Prevention Administration. Yuk Jin hears the announcement and shows absolutely no surprise at all, because his confident fishing throughout the entire afternoon had already told him this was coming. What gnaws at him now is the hidden rule behind quality. One stream, so many fish, yet somehow he picks out the single perfect one every single time. A realization flashes across his face, a clue almost in his grasp, and he stabs his communicator to summon his assistant, demanding every scrap of livestream footage for every challenger from the moment they boarded the plane. The assistant asks if he means the 2 Korean batches, but Yuk Jin shakes his head. Not just them. He wants every single challenger on Blue Star, every country, all of it, out on a level 3 floating island deep in the void sea. The sole surviving soldier king from Korea's first batch sits alone inside a cave. Seo Bang hears the announcement, falls quiet for a long moment, then smiles to himself, wondering aloud how this kid keeps pulling it off. He brings up his national destiny screen and reads his pollution at 4.2%. After surviving this long, he has begun to feel that quality and pollution are tied together, watching his own slowly creep up from 0 without ever fully understanding what the word means, unable to tell which piece of meat is clean or which fruit is deadly. The only thing he is certain of is that since arriving, his appetite has climbed and his strength has grown, yet his spirit grid reads 99.65%. It dropped at some point without him noticing, and the screen labels it his mental health. Even though everything in his head feels perfectly normal, he sighs, tapping the terminal, watching a pale frame of light wrap around the vine-bound chicken beside him. He uploads it, the bird vanishes in a flash. The system calls it good quality. 6,000 times critical hit, and the Korean feed comes roaring alive. Xiaobong scratches his head. It runs fast but is otherwise normal. This creature is absolutely no different from a basic Blue Star chicken, so how on earth is it even being judged? He sinks into the exact same deep confusion that is eating Yukshin alive. Night deepens as the daily peak of uploads rolls in. Most standards are flawed, but high multipliers spark rare celebrations. Celebrations spark, then America strings 2 hits. First, a velvet grass sheep lands at good quality in 5,000 times. Then, another perfect hit comes from William Davis at 40,000 times. The American chat swarms the stream, puffing out their chests and boasting. They claim they have perfect resources too, and that tonight belongs to free America. But when they read the line, laughter absolutely explodes. That perfect quality haul that guy guarded all day without moving an inch is actually a field of dream hemp leaves. The chat is absolutely wheezing. The consensus is that Korea feeds its country survival resources, while America gets spiritual comfort, to each their own. None of that noise reaches the void sea, on his level 2 floating island. There the jungle is pitch black, with his campfire casting the only orange glow. He sits cross-legged on the dirt, looking up at the treetop duplex. That treetop duplex he built with his own hands, he is not naive enough to call. Sleeping high up safe, who knows what climbs trees in the dead of night? Or what poisonous vine creeps along a branch without making a sound? In a godforsaken place like this, he would rather be paranoid than dead. Before going up, he rigs warning gadgets below. He is in no rush. He pulls his dagger, walking slowly over to a pile of thick branches. A quick flick of his wrist sends sharp wood chips flying, shaving them to points. An hour later, dozens of spikes are sharp, at the base of the giant tree. Down there, he drives each spike into the soil at a slant, tips pointed outward. This builds a protective thorn halo around the roots, but a base layer is not enough, so he drags over the heavy barbed vines he collected during the day. One single scratch from these causes bleeding, and he wraps them around the trunk. Wrapped at varying heights, from his waist to over his head, making an anti-climb net. Next is an old trick he won't forget. He rakes ash from the fire. He scatters it in an even circle around the entire thorn halo defense. Cleaning his hands, he slings a pouch of wood ash around his neck. Then he uses his wind-chasing claw to fire himself right back up into the canopy. Up there, he anchors the safety hook to the main trunk as a lifeline. He straddles a thick forked branch as he feels his way to the canopy's edge. There his tree's lush crown tangles with the branches of the massive trees. Beside it, every single junction that could serve as a high-altitude bridge. He lashes with barbed vines and dusts them with thick ash, better safe than dead. It blocks threats that walk, things that climb, and especially those that strike from the rooftops. With everything ready, he exhales slowly and crawls back into the hollow and into his sleeping bag, holding his dagger in a reverse grip, tight against his chest, letting the rustling leaves carry him off to sleep in a few minutes. Flat on the Korean feed, the late-night viewers are completely stunned, calling it a three-dimensional lockdown, textbook camping. One fan is already heading out to fence the trees outside his own building to stay safe. Samu nods. Long at the commentary desk, admitting his caution runs far deeper than expected, calling his defense set up a textbook lesson in total risk avoidance. Then, night blankets the entire void sea, and while he sleeps soundly for the challengers who reached a level 2 island today without finding any shelter. The gates of hell are only now swinging wide. A level 1 island has barely any resources, so sleeping under the stars just leaves you cold. But level 2 islands are a completely different beast, because once it goes fully dark, the predators of the night awaken. Over on the Indian feed, Challenger Ram is shivering inside his sleeping bag atop a boulder when an thick centipede slithers up beside him, rears its head, and sprays a dark green acid that burns a smoking hole right through the fabric. Crawling right inside, the horrifying screams and thrashing last barely 12 seconds before the feed goes pitch black and he is gone. On the South Korean feed, Budong gets lucky finding a hollow tree before dark, but sets up zero defenses, not even ash. And in the dead of night, a massive swarm of insects boils out of the ground and surges right up his pants. He barely survives by slapping himself raw and rolling around on the hard ground, but that surgically perfected face, prettier than a woman's, ends up completely covered in painful bites, and his stream fills with weeping. On the Australian feed, Challenger Williams spread some ash, set a couple traps, and slept on a branch 12 meters high, feeling completely secure. That is, until 12 pairs of glowing green eyes snap open in the neighboring tree crowns, padding silently along the branches to box him in. On our protagonist's side, a deadly visitor arrives too, a giant beast like a leopard, easily twice the size of a calf, stepping out from the brush. Beneath the giant tree, it sniffs the air, catching the faint human scent above, then stops at the boundary line of ash. It snorts in irritation, stepping right over it toward the roots. It crouches to leap, but as its body rises, a slanted wooden spike slices open its leg, falling back with a low growl. It circles the tree trunk in frustration, then coils its powerful hind legs, leaping clear over the protective barrier of thorns. Straight toward the trunk, claws ready to grip the bark, but the sharp anti-climbing netting sinks deep into its paws. Blinding pain ruins its grip, sending the beast tumbling straight out of the air right onto the sharp ground spikes, tearing 2 deep, bloody gashes across its torso. It rolls away in a pitiful heap, throwing one last enraged glare at the cursed thorny tree before limping defeated into the shadows. Up above, the protagonist never even stirs. The Korean live chat goes absolutely wild, cheering that their champion just claimed first blood, that he is farming high-level monsters in his sleep without taking a single scratch, that he wrecked the unwanted guests downstairs while sound asleep upstairs, signing off with a warm good night, brother. And see you tomorrow, but over inside the Disaster Prevention Command Center, the mood is completely opposite, the entire hall lit bright and the tension is suffocating. A massive screen broadcasts the live feeds of Korea's remaining 24 contenders, with 7 of them highlighted in giant windows. These 7 never found shelter before nightfall. One is wedged in a rock crevice at the island's edge, his lips purple and shivering uncontrollably. Another waves a torch through the dark, hoping the fire holds off the monsters. The rest clutch their weapons with their backs to massive trees. Their nerves are shattered. Terror is written on every face. Director Weakling stands at the console, his eyes scanning the 7 screens with a pale face, bitterly muttering that even if these guys had just dug a hole and buried themselves, it would help. Beside him, the intelligence chief, Ju Gaeon-pyong, sighs heavily and asks the grim question, how many of these people will actually survive the night? Morning comes, golden sunlight pierces the canopy, shining down into his camp 20 meters above. Our guy wakes up with a giant yawn, having slept like a log straight through to dawn. As he crawls out and stretches, his bones pop, and he feels completely rejuvenated, like a bottomless well of power is surging within him. First up is checking the camp perimeter. He inspects the protective thorn vines and the high ash layer, finding them perfectly untouched, no signs of any nighttime intruders. Creeping across the rooftops, satisfied, he packs up his sleeping gear, then aims his wind-chasing claw at a solid spot on the trunk, leaps and slides down the cable to the forest floor for his daily inspection. He walks the ash line first. There are messy tracks along the border, with a few dead insects flipped on their backs, legs completely stiff, and he carelessly sweeps the tiny bodies aside with his dagger, totally unimpressed by how poorly these things handled a little basic ash. Moving closer to the inner thorn halo, he suddenly stops. One slanted spike is stained dark red with a clump of grayish-brown fur caught in its barbs. He looks up the trunk to the defensive netting, seeing where a piece of barbed vine has been ripped free, leaving behind smears of blood. There are also clear signs of a struggle leading deep into the dark jungle. Looks like he had some nocturnal visitors, but their skills were lacking, and none of them made it past the first floor. Confirming there is no lingering danger, he sighs deeply, an expression of pure frustration crossing his face over a stupid miscalculation. Had he known the beasts out here were this aggressive, he would have spent the night turning those simple spikes into a lethal killing trap instead of a basic deterrent. Now a perfectly good breakfast has limped away with a broken leg for absolutely nothing. Talk about a waste. On the Korean feed, early morning viewers praising his flawless plans suddenly choke, the entire chat quickly realizing that the monster actually came to eat him, and that baiting was his real goal. All along, the consensus lands on the fact that top-tier hunters always disguise themselves as harmless, weak prey, but while the audience is still laughing, a sudden announcement of the National Destiny Challenge echoes in everyone's ears. Yesterday's report is live. Global Challenger deaths total 713, Korea lost 5, America 4, Russia 4, Japan 6, and India 9, as the list continues. As for causes, harsh environments, poison and falls count for 15%, player combat 6 and beast strikes. The remaining 79%, 700 lives snuffed out in an instant. Fading into the darkness of last night, inside the command center, the room grows heavy again. Of the 7 pin feeds, 4 have already gone pitch black, and out of the 3 remaining, 2 are covered in gruesome wounds, their eyes carrying the sheer terror and numbness of survivors who barely crawled out of a massive disaster. Beyond those 7, one of the first batch of survivors who lasted this long died yesterday while exploring a level 3 island. Director Wee Cheljin slams his fist onto the console, his chest heaving. He drags in a long breath, forcing down the visible pain in his eyes, ordering that the pension processes for the 5 fallen compatriots begin immediately. Then he issues a second order that hits even harder, telling them to dispatch the survival assessment team to evaluate the personal condition and surroundings of every single Korean challenger still alive. Jo Jaeonpong feels a jolt run through him and steps forward, asking the director if they are truly going to use that. Cheljin nods grimly. By the challenge rules, each country gets only 1 chance per round. to airdrop non-military supplies and a 20-character message to a single one of its challengers. Seriously, this is no ordinary drop. It is a precious off-field trump card. Spend it on the wrong challenger, and it is completely wasted. So when to use it on whom, with what supplies, and how to phrase those 20 characters heavily weighs on the whole picture. Across the globe, foreign feeds are already drowning in absolute grief, from an American crying out as their elite troops are ripped apart, to a distraught South Korean wailing that their oppa's face was torn apart. Last night swallowed a great many ill-prepared elites from every nation, more than a few self-declared aces had their throats torn open by monsters while they slept. At the Korean commentary desk, the three commentators stand up together. 5 proud compatriots are left in that sea of clouds forever, Sir Chongren says, hands folded, her voice cracking slightly, that they fought bravely for the nations tomorrow, and their names will be carved onto the monument. Jin Gupong presses his lips tight, his back straight as a drawn blade, while Seo Mayong lowers his head and quietly wipes the corners of his eyes. On his level 2 island, he settles, his expression letting the heavy toll sink in. It is only day 2, and 5 more compatriots are already dead, and honestly, his smooth run over these 2 days was purely the work of fate and his sharp survival instincts. But this is the void. Look at the endgame simulation, ruled by a supreme will. There is absolutely no mercy here, and no room for tears. He drags in a breath, forcing the grief down because sadness cannot save his country. The only thing he can do to prolong its survival is bring back more supplies, strengthening the very foundation of his country's destiny. Time to get to work. He tightens his backpack straps and opens his status screen as he sets out, showing his name, his vital signs completely normal, and his spirit grid at a full 100%. With his pollution levels at 0, his foot suddenly freezes midair, pollution back to 0. He remembers it clearly, scraping his knee yesterday and seeing those fine gray specks clinging to the edge of the wound, with the screen showing exactly 2%. Right at that moment, yet after just one night, it has vanished. He bends to roll up his right pant leg, peeling away the makeshift cloth bandage he tied, and the sight stops him cold. No scab, no skin break, and no inflammation. His knee is as smooth as new, without a single scar left behind. The injury is gone, and his mind starts racing. He rubs his fingers hard across the spot where the gash was, and there is 0 pain, not a single scar. A passive healing skill, perhaps. Riding along with his eye of destiny, maybe, but before the thought even forms, he shuts it down. That eye simply burns way too much energy. Yesterday, the tiny blink framing his left eye did not sting him once. Mental drain always leaves real exhaustion behind. It was not the eye, his face goes grim. If the eye did not do this, it is his body's doing. He clearly saw those gray patches covering his wound with his left eye. No way, they just evaporated into nothing, leaving only one truth standing. His body actually absorbed that pollution, making it a part of himself. A cold chill runs down his spine. Is he about to sprout into some tentacled monster? He hops in place couple of times to test his legs. No pain, no itch, joints loose, muscles moving smoothly, nothing wrong anywhere. This explains why he woke up with 0 fatigue and that bottomless surge of energy. His mind is incredibly sharp, like he is flooded with adrenaline that won't drain. Over on the Korean feed, they puzzle over why he froze mid-step. Suddenly, the room floods with question marks. Where is the wound? Someone asks. That massive bloody gash. And another user marvels that there is not even a scar left overnight. The consensus is quickly swinging toward calling him a domestically produced cyborg, until one cooler head tells everyone to stop cheering and check the other feeds. Soldier King Seo Hong's injuries healed fast too. That reality cools down the brief frenzy by a few degrees. Meanwhile, in the third research group, Yuk Jin sits under heavy dark circles, staring at a paused frame of him checking his knee. 5-meter display to his left is split into more than 100 windows, replaying Challenger footage from every country at speed. His notebook is a mess of scribbles with 2 words ringed in red: pollution and spirit grid. Blue star can pry almost nothing out of the endgame simulation. They only know what the challengers let slip about the status screen in their vision, so he spent the whole night pulling hundreds of recordings to stitch these 2 concepts together from the fragments. The spirit grid remains a mystery, but pollution, simply put, is some undesirable state that challengers bother to quantify inside the void sea. Eating, drinking, even a simple scrape all push Value up what it actually is, he cannot say without any samples to dissect, and materials brought back by critical hits always test clean, they are different. Species from anything on Blue Star, carrying absolutely no negative attributes at all. As if purified, he enlarges his feed and slows it down, the boy just muttered. Something his live audio only caught as a few blurred syllables, but he doesn't need the sound, he can read lips, and he mouths those 4 words in sync with him. Pollution zeroed, he drags up yesterday's footage of him checking the knee right after climbing onto the level 2 island, and another loop snaps shut. Wait for it, his left eye can see the pollution. That explains his obsessive footwork and the pickiness, because he was never choosing based on blind luck, he was screening for sources of pollution. What he just said hands the researcher a sharper truth. The pollution actually gets absorbed and assimilated by the body, not piled up. Dead end, it is utterly fascinating. He breathes his hunger to know whether left eye is a mutation from the Void Sea or some gift from Blue Star. Staring even sharper now, he pulls off his glasses, rubs his dry eyes, and lets the thought surface that he would give anything to have him dig that eye out for a proper dissection. In the jungle, he moves carefully and slowly, not at all glad that the value dropped to 0. Instead, the heavy weariness in his bones has cranked to its ceiling. Every gift fate hands out has its price marked in advance, and a physical healing that breaks all human logic has to be hiding some lethal mechanism behind it. Past a certain threshold, whatever is waiting for him might be a genetic collapse or a one-way trip into something inhuman. Talk about terrifying. Survival comes first. He cannot get reckless. He follows yesterday's route back toward the stream, the morning forest under a thin skin of mist. His advance is still that maddening, flawless, bizarre footwork, walking a stretch, stopping, cutting a hard turn, swinging wide for no reason a watcher can name. Yesterday, the Korean feed would have cursed itself hoarse at the display. Today, watching the same psychotic sense of direction, a strange comfort rises in them instead. The room agrees that this is their brother Eye, and seeing him this paranoid finally settles their nerves. Someone else reports that a challenger from the country next door just stepped on a pile of leaves and plunged into a snake pit, gone in a blink. He weaves on through the dense trees, because this trip is not just about a few fish to fill his stomach, it is to verify something. He keeps up his sneaky zigzag the whole way to the stream, then heading straight upstream to the rocky source crevice he found yesterday. He pulls out the small folding iron pot and fills it. Then he works back down the creek, hunting for today's food. The Eye of Destiny narrows and activates, locking fast onto a clean silver shuttlefish. He raises his right arm, fires, and drags the forearm-length catch onto the bank. He repeats this process twice more, and inside 5 minutes, 3 silver shuttlefish of similar size are flopped on the grass. He crouches with his dagger to scale them, gut them, and rinse them clean, laying the 3 on a nearby rock. But he does not pack up, heading back to the water to trigger his eye again, sweeping the stream. Within a dozen seconds, another silver shuttlefish caked in dense gray spots swims into view. Without hesitation, he raises his arm, hooks it, and hauls it thrashing onto the bank, slapping mud and water everywhere. He quickly crouches and pins it with his right hand. The second he touches it, his eyebrow goes up, sensing real power in this one. It has easily a third more strength than the 3 clean fish. He brings a rock down on its head, and it twitches twice and stills, but he does not reach for his knife yet. He spreads his right palm and reads it with his eye, finding a few tiny gray flecks rubbed off onto his skin. Then he pulls up the status screen, and the pollution still reads 0, completely unchanged. So this stuff is only clinging to the surface for now and has not seeped into his blood. Reassured by this, he cleans the polluted fish as well, carrying it to the rock to set it side by side with one of the clean ones. This is his experiment. He lays both hands on the 2 fish at once, pressing their bellies and spines, kneading them hard over and over, and the feedback through his fingers comes back completely different. The gray-spotted flesh is exceptionally firm, springy, and tough as rubber compared to the clean fish. Next, he works his dagger tip in to pry a slip of bone from each, holding one end. Each hand he snaps them. The clean bone breaks easily, while the gray-spotted he has to crank real force through his wrist. Finally, the bone barely gives. Tougher flesh, harder bone, and more strength. The experiment confirms his guess. These strange gray spots and high-dimensional energy genuinely toughen the physical structure. No wonder his scraped knee healed without a mark. It healed by morning. On the Korean feed, millions are completely stumped. They are baffled by the absolute nonsense he is performing. One asks, "What kind of hobby is playing with dead fish?" Another jokes that with those hands he belongs in a high-end spa. Chat settles on calling this metaphysical grocery shopping. Meanwhile, on the commentary desk, a thin sweat breaks on Sio's forehead as he desperately scrambles for an explanation. He suggests that he might be gauging meat quality through pressure. This is supposedly to check water safety. Sio grabs his thermos for a tactical sip. He calls it a rigorous field inspection. His tone has zero conviction. Jin Gupbong just turns his head. His expression plainly asks if Sio takes him for an idiot. Chong Gran quickly pastes on a professional smile to cover up the awkwardness, but elsewhere. In the third research group, Yuk Jin slams the table and stands. Fools will never understand him. With his blood pumping, he yells. He found the world's anomaly. He calls it a controlled variable experiment. Snatching his pen, he writes like a man completely possessed. The fourth fish was the control. The polluted sample was measured. Against the clean ones, it proves void sea pollution can mutate a body or even enhance it outright. He pushes up his glasses with fanatic awe. This young man does not just find anomalies, but he also has the cold mind to strip them down. To the core, down by the stream, his fear of the unknown drops. If it brings strength, it has value. The price of that enhancement is simply the next thing to investigate. He steps over to a nearby tree, snaps off a sturdy branch, scrapes the thorns, and skewers the clean fish one by one. The gray-spotted one he leaves exactly where it lies, since he has real food now. Who would eat that thing? He shoulders his catch, takes up the heavy iron pot in his left hand, and prepares to find his bearings, starting back along the path to his camp. As the morning mist thins, the thick jungle opens up. He sees further, wandering until he is 100 meters from camp. Then he stops. At the edge of his vision, a pale red halo blooms. Danger, he holds his breath and listens closely. He catches an extremely faint chewing sound. Drifting over, something is eating. He flashes sideways behind a big tree, crouching low. He sets the pot down without a single whisper of sound, then flattens himself and crawls forward on all fours like a gecko, 2 meters to a dense bush where he gently pinches a leaf to open a gap. On the feed, comments flood at the sight of those incredibly smooth, stealthy movements. They call it ancestral craft, naming him the day's ground-hugging demon. Half the chat bets it is last night's big leopard. Others reassure themselves that as long as the enemy does not move, he can win. Camp till the end of time. He holds his breath, focusing his gaze as it cuts through the gap in the leaves. A dozen meters away in a clearing, a wide pool of dark red blood soaks the soil, and right at the center lies the carcass of a leopard-like beast, easily larger than a calf. Beside the dead body, crouched and hunched over its belly, a dog-sized creature greedily feasts to its absolute heart's content, and every time it lifts its head, shredded flesh swings. From its fangs, a glowing panel pops up in his right eye, naming the leopard carcass as a black-spined leopard, and the dog-sized beast beside it as an iron-jaw beast. His eyes dart down to the leopard's foreleg, where an unusually deep slash runs clean and straight, far from a jagged bite. The clean edges were sliced by something sharp. The fur matches the tuft he pulled from his thorn spikes this morning, and the truth hits him all at once. This dead beast is the exact leopard that tried to clear his wall last night and failed. He stares at the shredded meat on the dirt, and a sudden pang of real grief hits him, because that was supposed to be his breakfast. Halfway across the world, the Korean feed, which was holding its breath for him, drops in absolute shock. He is actually mourning a meal. At a moment like this, the chat explodes. His priorities are seriously something else. Meanwhile, toxic overseas viewers swarm the chat like flies on fresh rot to jeer that the Korean coward is too terrified to move and just waiting to die. At the commentary desk, Seo Myung wipes his brow and warns of the extreme danger. The rule of the wild is simple: never disturb a feeding beast, since its territorial instincts peak right now, and even a minor noise acts as a direct challenge. His only smart move, Seo Myung says, is to use the wind and crawl back slowly without trying to play the hero. He narrows his left eye from the brush, activating the Eye of Destiny. The iron jaw beast glows under a pale red halo, with only small gray specks clinging to it, marking it as a clean, high-quality resource. He licks his dry lips, his mind already moving. It stole his breakfast, and he is going to make it pay debt with its own body. He scans the trees and thorny thickets in A matter of seconds, a sequence of practiced moves snapping together in. His head holding his breath, he backs up to the large tree, lifting 3 silver shuttlefish off a branch and picking the fattest one, a few quick slashes. Across its back and belly, a hard squeeze, and blood wells out along the grain of the meat. He pulls a 10-meter grappling hook from his pack, securing the bleeding fish onto the iron tip, standing carefully, rope now in hand. He swings it twice and lets it fly. The hook whistles over the iron jaw. Beast dropping into a thorn thicket a dozen meters behind the target. The fish lands heavy in the leaves, the scent of blood spreading instantly. The beast shudders, raising its head with a low growl, and abandons the leopard. Carcass to nose toward the brush on its right, the second its back is turned, he moves. He aims the wind-chasing claw at a high branch 7 or 8 meters overhead and hits the switch. The 3-clawed hook punches deep into the bark. The cable retracts fast, his feet leaving the ground as he swings upward, landing cleanly on the thick branch without a single wasted step. The beast creeps to the edge of the thicket, sniffing the bloody bait. From his high perch, he aims his right arm and fires, sending the hook dropping down. It plummets straight onto its back, claws snap shut, locked tight. The monster shrieks in pain, thrashing wildly to shake off the metal on its spine. He quickly slaps the trigger on his wrist with his left hand, activating the device. The heavy cable pulls taut, pulling the beast back, but it desperately digs its claws in. It drops low, pulls backward, resisting with everything it has. The branch cracks under him as the beast drags him forward, but he smiles. Kicking off with his right leg, the young hunter leaps boldly right off the creaking branch. The massive tree trunk now acts as a natural pulley, transforming his falling weight. The momentum of his drop creates a brutal counterweight on the other side. He uses physics to his advantage, grinding the cable hard against the bark. Wood chips spray everywhere as the iron jaw beast tries to stay anchored. But an overwhelming force yanks its back, lifting its heavy body off the ground. He lands perfectly on his feet, bending his knees to absorb the heavy impact of the fall. Above him, the wild beast hangs suspended in the air beneath the canopy. 4 limbs kick at nothing. It whimpers, completely stripped of its strength. Nowhere to run, a complete dead end. The streaming chat falls dead silent. Then the screen absolutely explodes with praise over his brilliant high school physics tactic. The viewers crown him a genius, while the toxic foreigners go silent. At the command center, the host's jaw drops, freezing with a thermos in midair. Jinbong slams his hand down on the desk, letting out a massive, roaring laugh that rattles the room. He booms that nobody ever said a man has to run away from a mere beast. Today, the young hunter is showing the entire world what real intelligence looks like. Chongren calmly tucks a loose strand of hair behind her ear and smiles. She gently notes that local wisdom might just exceed the mental capacity of certain viewers. People who only use their muscles probably struggle to understand how intellect rewrites fate. The polite but savage burn lands so clean the trolls are left absolutely speechless. Meanwhile, he brushes the wood chips off his hands and grabs a heavy branch. He picks up the same sturdy wood limb he had used earlier to skewer his catch. Slowly letting the cable out, he lowers the hanging monster right to eye level. As the beast snarls and snaps in front of him, he raises his wooden club. He smashes it against its head, mocking it to show those teeth again and steal his food. He dares the creature to try stealing his breakfast one more time, swinging with every word. Another solid crack, wood meets bone. The Korean room loses the plot. The chat absolutely loses it, laughing that this life or death fight became a domestic spat. Others admit that nobody holds a grudge over a stolen meal quite like him. After landing a dozen brutal strikes on the beast, he finally shakes out his aching wrist. He stabs the bloody branch into the mud and draws his sharp dagger. But the very second he takes a step forward to finish it, the beast lunges wildly. It twists on the swing, lunges, razor-sharp claws fly straight at him. The claws scrape the back of his hand, and only quick reflexes save his skin. Realizing the monster is still incredibly feral, he abandons the idea of getting close. Instead, he pins the cable down with his foot to lock the beast in place. With both of his hands free, he yanks the heavy branch back out of the mud. He crouches on the ground, letting the dagger fly up and down as wood shavings rustle to the dirt. Soon a crude wooden spear with a sharpened tip is ready. He needs a long reach against short reach, he reasons. Let them dodge this, he grips the spear in both hands and drives it at the suspended beast, but its survival instincts kick in, forcing its body to violently wrench aside in midair. He only lands A few light gashes across its hind legs and ribs as it evades every vital point. And roars even more savagely. His temper rises to meet the challenge. He turns the thrust into a sweeping slash, winding his arm around to bring the spear down on its spine. The blow lands with a heavy thud, leaving the beast convulsing and completely frozen. Now a sharp glint cuts across his eyes. He drives force up from his waist and gut, thrusting the spear straight up with everything he has. The dull, sickening sound of the point sinking deep into flesh rings out. Then his face suddenly freezes because the beast happened to spin at that exact moment. His spear went, without any deviation, straight into the most delicate, unspeakable part of its hindquarters, skewering right through in a single stroke. A horrific scream splits the jungle and rakes the sky, carrying an absolute agony far beyond words, the kind that prickles your scalp and runs cold down your spine. The beast jerks violently, the air, its eyes bulging out. Within seconds, those eyes roll back white. The head drops slack, and it dies right there in agony. It was a painful and honestly incredibly humiliating death. He stands there holding the spear in both hands, completely numb, looking from his hands to the limp, silent creature hanging above. He quietly swears to himself that he really did not mean for things to end like that. The Korean broadcast feed sits completely silent for 5 seconds, then erupts like a volcano. Over that soul-piercing strike, the chat insists they can feel that bone-chilling agony through the screen, calling him a ruthless troll who specializes in things no decent human being would do. Right on schedule, the international viewers arrive, immediately waving the banner of animal rights. The United States brands him a perverted Korean with zero morals, while France protests this horrific desecration of life. Some even demand the Supreme punish his twisted mind. Canadian viewers insist a beast's life is still a life, demanding Korea offer a formal apology. Jim Gut Bong laughs furiously, grabbing the microphone to open fire back, but the local Korean viewers have already beaten him to it. Their keyboards throwing sparks, they snap that nobody should lecture them about humanitarianism. During a national survival challenge, they call out the double-standard hypocrites who do worse and have no right to judge. Korea worships no fake sanctimony, they shout, and believes only in surviving. So Chongren leans to her mic at the perfect moment and offers some blunt advice to anyone feeling sorry for the beast. When their own challenger meets a deadly predator, they are welcome to lie down on the spot and offer themselves as a snack, all the better to show off their grand international compassion. None of this online noise reaches him, clinging to his strict survival creed where a clean finishing blow is the ultimate virtue. He drives the dagger once more deep into its throat, watching the blood thread down the fur until he is certain it is dead. He carves the carcass quickly, harvesting only the choice tenderloin and the 2 muscular hind legs. He wipes the blade clean on the hide and sheathes it. He retracts his wind-chasing claw, letting the heavy carcass thud onto the grass before wrapping the meat in silver shuttlefish in broad leaves. He grabs the little iron pot. He walks away without looking back, leaving the Korean chat room completely baffled. They cannot believe he left so much meat, saying he got arrogant. Others insist he should have hung it up to dry. Then Soman speaks up. He explains with clear admiration that butchering a giant beast like that is brutal. Doing it without proper tools is a massive drain on time and energy. Plus, wild beasts crawl with parasites. The tenderloin and hind legs he took are the cleanest. They have the firmest muscle and are safest, so leaving the rest makes perfect sense. The viewers finally realize they were wrong to judge him. By then, he is already back at his camp under the giant tree. He puts his bundle down just as his stomach growls right on cue. All his morning energy is spent. He narrows his left eye to scan for danger. Finding no red threats nearby, he coaxes last night's fire back to life. He skewers a silver shuttlefish on a branch and sets it to roast. The fat drips as a rich aroma spreads, and he tears into the hot fish. The savory, burning meat warms his stomach, melting away the sharp edge of his hunger. Once the single fish is gone, he sits cross-legged by the warm embers. He studies the tough pieces of the iron jaw beast he hauled back. Holding his dagger in a reverse grip, he tests the sharp edge with his thumb. He is ready to process all of it, but he decides to wait on the knife. Standing up, he dusts himself off and heads right back into the thick brush. He makes several trips to gather large leaves, branches, and a flat stone slab. The Korean stream watches him work, assuming he is just playing around with trash. Some ask if he is planning to perform some ridiculous martial arts trick. Others complain that his pile of wet branches will never catch fire. He sits near the hollow tree, carefully pouring a little water from the pot. Cleaning the stone slab, he washes a few broad leaves, conserving every drop. Once those thin wooden skewers are ready, he folds the edges of a large leaf. After pinning the corners, a secure, leak-proof bowl takes shape in seconds. He fills it with a third of his water, saving it inside the hollow. This leaves him with a steady supply of safe, clean drinking water. Next, he pulls the flat stone slab over and places the meat on it. He carves off a thick, juicy portion of tenderloin and sets it aside. This prime cut will be his lunch, and he preps the rest with great patience. His dagger glides smoothly along the muscle to trim away the tough white tissue. Out here in the wild, no one wants to get tough meat stuck in their teeth. He carefully slices the remaining portions into long, finger-thick strips. The viewers finally realize his plan when he builds a wooden cooking stand. He hangs his iron pot over the fire and tosses the raw meat inside. The chat jokes that his trusty cooking pot is finally earning its keep. They tease that plain boiled meat with absolutely no seasoning deserves 0 stars. Meanwhile, Soman sits up and approves of this smart decision. He explains that wild meat is incredibly risky because of dangerous bacteria. Simply roasting it over an open flame does not guarantee safety. Boiling the meat at high heat is the single smartest way to survive. To kill whatever is hiding inside and secure his food, back in Korea in H City, the television in Lee Mee's home broadcasts the footage of her son boiling the meat. On the sofa, Lee Mee sees that her son is not just alive, but has already stockpiled. A massive heap of meat, the heavy stone crushing her chest, finally drops away. Her boy is actually a decent cook who knows how to kill off dangerous germs, which means he will not starve in that godforsaken place after all. Her eyes go a bit red, but a smile of relief settles on her lips because as long as he eats well, stays warm, and remains safe, nothing else truly matters. The doorbell rings. Lee Mee quickly wipes her eyes and opens the door to the same pair of operational agents who delivered her supplies before. The male officer apologizes gently for the intrusion. She hurries to invite them inside, but the female agent waves it off, saying they cannot stay. They have only come to deliver excellent news. The general administration, knowing that Imap is fighting hard for the country and worried about her living all alone in H City, contacted the Western Military Region, where her husband is currently posted. The commanders there have approved letting her move into the military unit's family housing compound so the two of them can be close by and look after one another every single day. Tears well up at this, and she covers her mouth, sobbing out her deep gratitude that the country still cares for them like this. The agent gently tells her it is only right, adding that the car is already waiting downstairs to help her pack today, though Lee Mee insists she can handle it herself. But out here, work never stops. The boiled meat is still bubbling in the pot as he kindles a second fire nearby, crossing and stacking several forked branches before binding them tight with thin vines to construct a simple rack a few dozen centimeters off the ground. He quickly scrapes a pile of damp branches using a dagger until he has accumulated a pile of moist wood shavings and twigs. 20 minutes later, the pot is boiling hard, with a layer of fat and gray foam coating the surface. The meat strips have turned pale white and shrunken. He fishes one out, blows on it, tears off a piece, and chews, finding the texture absolutely perfect before he lifts the pot off the heat. Then he smothers the fire with a pile of damp wood shavings and green branches, choking the flames down so they will produce smoke instead of burning cleanly. A massive cloud of acrid white smoke quickly billows up into the air. He squints and coughs through it because that bitter reek is exactly the kind of smoke he wanted, and he shifts the rack directly over the thick plume, laying the cooked meat strips across it. The smoldering heat below cooks it gently, while the rising smoke wraps around the meat tightly. Boiling has killed off the parasites and bacteria, and the smoke now draws out the remaining moisture to preserve it. The Korean livestream audience sits stunned, then realizes everything, facepalming forever, assuming he was just making simple boiled meat. They realize boiling sterilizes while smoking dehydrates, meaning the food's shelf life is fully maxed out. Shouting for Soman to grab his thermos, back at headquarters, Jin Gukbang slaps his thigh, roaring that old Soman misjudged yet again. Our boy was not just cooking lunch, he was building a strategic reserve. Soman's old face flushes so red he could probably dig a 3-room apartment with his toes. He takes a quiet, tactical sip, conceding that this young man's thinking runs Far beyond ordinary common sense, Chang Gran covers a laugh, telling him not to mind it. Since he always seems to bring them surprises they never saw coming, he picks. He lifts the iron pot and dumps the spent water far away because the boiling broth from raw meat is just blood, foam, and parasites, and keeping it only invites trouble. After quickly rinsing the iron pot, he turns to the leftover branches and pulls out a thick branch he saved earlier, which is over 2 meters long. Straight, hard, and heavy, the solid weight of it feels absolutely perfect in his hand. He draws his dagger, presses the blade, and slowly scrapes away the rough outer bark and burrs inch by inch. Although his wind-chasing claw is a fantastic weapon, in the end it is only extra gear, and in avoid see this dangerous, he lacks the power to take on 3,000 emperors barehanded, meaning he needs a long, thick weapon that can deliver a piercing blow the very instant he wants. He sits cross-legged, holding the 2-meter wood in his left hand, and dagger gripped in his right, shaving along the grain as chips fall in a steady rustle. Every half hour he stops and walks back to the rack, braving the stinging smoke to turn the strips one by one. The slow, low fire and thick smoke pull their surface to an enticing reddish-brown color. After more than an hour, the spear tip is carved down to a sharp cone, and he brings it close to the base of the fire, using coal heat to fire. Harden it, drawing it back only when the surface is charred black. He stands, grips it in the middle, tests the weight, and with a quick flick of his wrist and power from his core, drives 3 quick thrusts into the air. The dull, crisp whoosh of each thrust leaves him fully satisfied. An inch longer is an inch stronger, he tells himself, and the next thing that dares show its teeth, he will run straight through. As noon slowly comes on, his stomach starts to growl fiercely. He feeds the fire until the flames leap, skewers the last clean silver shuttlefish, and stands it slanted in the ground beside the heat to roast. Then he pours the bowl of reserved water into the iron pot and drops in all the tenderloin slices he had cut that morning. Oil hisses into the fire, the charred smell drifts everywhere, and the water bubbles up with the meat tumbling inside. When the fish is golden on both sides, he reaches over and takes a bite straight off it, the skin crisp and the flesh tender. Chewing hard, he lifts a piece of cooked tenderloin from the pot. On a skewer, blows on it twice, and tosses it in his mouth where it feels soft and springy and flooded with savory juice. If only he had a little minced garlic, it would be perfect. He leans against the giant tree and lets out a long breath. The chatroom goes wild watching him feast, and the prepackaged meals in their hands taste like nothing. Tears practically run from the corners of their mouths, with a consensus that even without any seasoning, this beats the yellowish paste the man next door India is choking down. They even rename his survival show a full-blown mukbang. Full and content, he pats his belly, lets out a burp, and turns to the rack on the other side. By his count, the meat has been smoking a solid 5 or 6 hours since morning. With the surface moisture drawn out and the strips shrunken, the color is now a tempting light reddish-brown. He decides it is done and time to wrap up. He scrapes every smoked strip off to cool on a clean slab, then takes the leaves he washed earlier to bind the meat tight in groups of 10, pinning the openings with small wooden skewers. This task takes him the better part of an hour. He finishes packing 7 bundles of portable smoked jerky and stuffs them into the very bottom of his backpack, that solid new weight giving him a deep sense of security. Now he needs to gather other supplies to hit tonight's upload quota. He picks up the iron pot, douses the fire with the remaining water, then stomps the ashes down with his foot to ensure no spark survives. He takes up his new wooden spear and sets out to explore, but he barely clears 2 steps from camp when a drop of water splashes the back of his hand. He stops and looks up. At some point, the sky is filled with massive dark clouds pressing low over a floating island, prompting him to narrow his left eye and trigger the Eye of Destiny. His entire field of vision floods solid red, signaling a natural disaster. He closes the eye after a single second, but even so it stings sharply. The range of this storm is apparently swallowing the entire level 2 island. A torrential downpour crashes down from above, so violent it drowns the jungle in a white sheet of water in the blink of an eye. This rotten sky does not play fair, he curses under his breath and retreats to the hollow at the foot of the giant tree. In just a few steps, rainwater streaming down his cheeks, he looks up toward his apartment, 20 meters in the air, realizing that in a storm like this, the water pooling in that natural hollow could probably raise fish. His carefully built safe point is scrapped. on the spot, leaving him to simply huddle in the tree hollow and ride out the wind and rain. The Korean feed's playful banter vanishes in an instant, with every heart in their throat. This is a brutal wake-up call. The storm hits with zero warning. All in that his high-altitude flat is about to become a swimming pool, that the shelter up top is finished, leaving the big question of whether he can hold out. Below, some viewers ask whether dangerous beasts come out in weather like this. Soam's expression goes grim as he calls this big trouble, warning that in the wild, a rainstorm like this is far more lethal than any beast because it strips a challenger's body heat incredibly fast. The shelter edge he built up has been reset to zero by this natural disaster. Jin Gukbong clenches his fists and stares at the screen in silence, while the overseas accounts see their long-awaited carnival. The US accounts crow that retribution has come, and Korean luck has run dry, with India starting a countdown, claiming the Korean rat won't last 3 hours. He crouches in the hollow and pulls his collar tight as the temperature plunges. Under the lashing of the rain, he thought it was just a passing shower that would quit soon, but it only thickens heavier and heavier when his gaze cuts through the watery curtain. He sees the puddles at the tree's base already merging into one. The water climbs fast, the muddy muck already overtaking the surface of the roots and creeping toward the hollow. At this rate, his refuge goes under in less than half an hour. He grits his teeth, done playing the sitting duck. It's better to gamble while some daylight remains than to just wait here and drown. No hesitation. Ground is his only way out. Once night falls and blinds him in the black with hypothermia setting in, he's truly finished. He wipes the muddy water off his face, swings the backpack on, drags the 2 straps tight, and buckles them across his chest, gripping the wooden spear in his left hand. His gaze pierces the rain toward the faint outline of the hills at the island's center. Facing the gale, he steps out of the hollow and plunges headlong into the white curtain. He runs barely a dozen meters before he is already soaked to the bone, heading straight toward a patch of broadleaf plants resembling banana trees where he had previously cut down some massive leaves. He chops down a single broadleaf over 2 meters long, holding it high over his head. The storm drums heavily against it while he trudges onward, his spear held in his other hand, stumbling unevenly toward the high hills. The Korean chatroom instantly floods with panic, asking why he would ever leave a shelter that at least blocked the rain, fretting that the freezing storm looks terrifying even to watch. They worry that encountering a beast in this wild wind is too reckless, especially since he just finished eating and is already running for his life. Meanwhile, the global viewers pounce, with American chatters mocking that running out in this storm is simply begging for death. Indian viewers wonder if nature is finally going to eliminate this rat. At the commentary desk, Jin Gupong slams his hand down and praises this incredible decisiveness. Pointing directly at the rapidly rising water, that original shelter was a death trap. And staying another 30 minutes would have had him struggling to stay afloat like a turtle. Soman wipes cold sweat from his forehead, agreeing that tropical jungle storms flood incredibly fast. Hypothermia is extremely dangerous, but drowning is far worse, so heading for high ground is his only path to survival. Honestly, the island flooding has turned absolutely savage. He slogs onward as the heavy muck swallows his calves, draining his stamina fast. His vision is completely choked by the rain, limiting him to 10 meters. He blinks his left eye to trigger his skill, instantly spotting a red haloed dart wildly about 100 meters to his front left. A beast, flushed from its lair by the rising waters, is driven mad by the storm. He immediately changes direction, taking a wide path around it. Enduring a mild sting in his eye, he relies on his precognition to successfully bypass several other monsters. But as he finally pushes through a thick grove of trees, his path is blocked completely. The heavy rain has converged into a rushing 10-meter-wide torrent, tearing through the low ground, churning violently with broken branches, thorns, and floating logs under the savage current. Peering through the rain, he spots a solitary raised mound sitting on the opposite bank.